Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, live from Bridgestone Arena. Predators tonight taking on the Edmonton Oilers right here on 102.5 The Game at 7 o'clock. That is the defending Western Conference champions. That is Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. If you're placing wagers on the game, I mean, I hate to say it, but Draisaitl is usually good for about 2 goals, at least every time he shows up to Bridgestone Arena. So last year when the Predators played Edmonton, I said to Barry Trotz off the air, but he was a Tuesday, and Barry Trotz was on the show. I said to Barry off the air, I said, hey, this team comes in, and I used a much more vulgar term than this, but I said, this team comes in here and just beats the crap out of the Predators every time they're here. And I felt like the more vulgar term was probably justified. And Barry said to me, he goes, you know, everybody's been saying that, but I hope we can get them tonight. And they lost like 7-1. So, I mean, you know, again, we'll see if they can avoid 0-4, but it is what it is. But I want to start on this today. First of all, Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up? What up?
So yesterday we ran Will Levis's press conference live, and I could only get to a point of just the mindless drivel coming out of his mouth that eventually I put the stop sign up at third base and was like, okay, I've heard enough. Let's move on to something, you know, more productive. But we didn't miss this little nugget that Will Levis volunteered at the end of his press conference about how practice went yesterday.
Well, we talked to Callahan about the urgency. He said, you know, it's always there, but there might be a different tone to it given the record and these next 2 tough road opponents. What's your take on the urgency going into a week like this?
Yeah, I think operationally just in and out of the huddle too. That's something we saw on this past Sunday that wasn't up to our standard. And with all the stuff that we do, with all of the motions and everything and different types of looks we're going to get to the defense, like we need to, you know, get up and set on the line of scrimmage with more than 15 seconds to go. We can't be breaking the huddle, you know, approaching the line with 6-7 seconds without even having to or being able to operate what we want to for the play. So it's working through this week of getting the substitutions game-like, making sure that we're getting in and out of the huddle with urgency. I think that mindset in the huddle, in and out of the huddle, should take its, you know, course throughout everything else that we're doing in the building and how we approach it. So we didn't have the best day of practice today. We all knew that. We want to come out tomorrow and make sure that that urgency and what we put out there on tape is more to our standards. So opportunity to do that tomorrow.
We didn't have the best day of practice today, so we need to come out tomorrow and have a good day of practice. What? You didn't have a good day of practice yesterday? So Wednesday is the first day of the week that the teams practice, where they get ready for the next week. You're 1-4. You just got embarrassed. Of all the bad things that have happened this season, I truly believe that Sunday's loss was the worst. I do. I believe, given the circumstances, how beat up Indy was, how bad their defense was, coming off of a bye, coming off of a win with a chance to, again, I don't think you would have made the playoffs if you won on Sunday, but at least you have something. 2-3 is not the end of the world. And you lost. You played terribly, led by the quarterback, but he wasn't the only one. And you lost. You've got the Buffalo Bills, a legitimate Super Bowl contender, coming up on Sunday. And you go out on the first day of practice and you just Peter Skoronski, because Levis let everybody in on the fact that they didn't have a good practice, volunteered that information. Peter Skoronski, after practice, was asked about the bad practice. Here's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you want to go out and have the best practice possible and prepare like it's a game environment. And could have been better today. I think there was just some slips in energy and some slips in execution. And, you know, game day, what we do on game day starts on Wednesday in terms of our execution. You got to have a good day on these days in the week, because that's how we build our confidence for Sunday, and that's how we get mentally ready for Sunday too. So, got to be better tomorrow. We have an opportunity tomorrow, so got to get after it.
So, yeah, Wednesday's really, really important. You know, it's the big day that kicks off the week, so we get our focus. And, you know, we had a bad practice today. Again, at 1-4 after the Indy loss. And I'm going to tell you who this is a reflection of. It's not a reflection of Will Levis. It's not a reflection of Peter Skoronski. And it's not a reflection of the players. I hate to say it, but it's a reflection of the coach. I am starting to get worried about Brian Callahan because, again, the first day back after getting embarrassed, and again, it's not like the team was drained. They're coming off the bye week. Brian Callahan might be losing the football team. They may be giving up. We always joke at the end of the year, hands in, Cancun on 3, because everybody can't wait to get done with the season and get to their off-season vacations and go on with their lives and free agency and everything else. And it feels like on October 17th, that might be where the Titans are. D. Mace has said it for 5 weeks when it comes to Brian Callahan. He better be careful with this quarterback or he's going to lose the team. They've already had issues with Calvin Ridley criticizing the coaching. Jamal Adams, got released today. He obviously wasn't very happy. So forget Sunshine Land and the rainbows for a second, because that's all fake. That's all bullcrap. It was at the beginning I said it and I was a mean guy, and now it's, wow, Jared was on to something there. Doesn't this seem like a total recipe for disaster when it comes to this football team? The GM and the coach sell guys on their vision all off season. They were telling people, we're going to be good. The vibes here in the building, we're doing something special. Just believe. Or at least that's what they said. Remember, Calvin Ridley chose the Titans because his wife's from Huntsville, and we had something good cooking around here. But the team was actually terrible. They didn't have a right tackle. Ian tried to tell you when he said he expected 4 wins this year. So nobody tells anybody along the way that, hey, you guys might suck. I mean, again, I remember the Seattle practices saying, I don't think the offense moved the ball 10 yards. And it was, Jared, it's practice. Yeah, okay. But it's also a reflection of where your football team is at that given point in time. And nobody wanted to believe it. Oh, no, they'll figure it out. And then, bam, reality hits. You lose week 1. But it was just one play here or there. Bam, reality hits. You lose week 2. Well, we rolled the ball there, and the right tackle's a problem, but we got to work on it. But it should be okay, and, we'll be the bam. You get embarrassed at home by Malik Willis. Then you win a game because the other team doesn't have a quarterback, and Will Levis doesn't play. But as the coach, right back to Will Levis we go, guys, and bam, you lose to a Colts team with a backup quarterback, without their best offensive player, without their best defensive player, without their second best defensive player, their best defensive back, coming off of a game in which they allowed Trevor Lawrence to throw for 380 yards. They're going to change anything about the team? They're change a quarter? No. And now you get Josh Allen and Buffalo on the road, and then you get arguably the best team in the NFL, Detroit, the week after. And I don't know if the anger inside the locker room, or I should say the anger, I feel like despair that this football team has right now. I don't know if it's at the quarterback or if it's at the coach who's unwilling to admit that the quarterback stinks, or if the players feel the coach is the problem himself. Or maybe the players feel like I feel, which is this entire thing is just one gigantic mess, and no matter how much lipstick they put on it, it's still a pig. Jared, we're going to be so much better this year. You'll see who's playing right tackle. Oh, trust us. Okay. And so the players then look at it like, I just got to get through it. But they're not going to come to practice energized to play. They're not looking at this trip to Buffalo and thinking, you know what? This is the week that we got to go all in. We got to prepare. We got to be focused, and we're going to show Buffalo. The league thinks we stink. The fans think we stink. The media thinks we stink. But we're going to show the Buffalo Bills this week. No, they come out and lollygag at practice. And I know because the quarterback volunteered the information. Nobody even asked. I'm not there every day. And I'm not even talking about as a media person that goes in and out of the locker room, but I'm talking about somebody who's a part of the team that wakes up and gets there at 7 a.m. and leaves at 7 at night and knows the ins and outs. So I'm not there. I'm not on this team. So I can't tell you for a fact that the coach is losing this team. But what I can tell you is it's a terrible sign. And Brian Callahan tells the Titans podcast that's a good thing. D. Mace, who has been in and out that building every day as a player, says no. So again, Brian Callahan doesn't talk to the media on Thursdays. But I'm sure Brian Callahan will say it's actually a good thing that they didn't practice well on Wednesday following the Indianapolis disaster. Followed by Calvin Ridley's comments. Followed by, again, a bad day of practice. The first day back at work. That is a giant red flag that a month and a half into the season, the coach has already lost the team. And it's a giant red flag for the operation as a whole. From Brinker to Carthon to Amy to Callahan, everybody. If it's October 17th and you're starting to lose the team, that is a bad sign. We'll get your phones going today at 615-737-1025. That's our phone number today. 615-737-1025. Now, I've said I'm not going to bench Will Levis. Like, I don't care if they bench Will Levis. I'm not calling for Will Levis's benching. But I think if I was Brian Callahan, I'd bench Will Levis. And I'm going to tell you why. And it doesn't have to do with the fact that Mason Rudolph probably gives you a better chance to win on Sunday. It's deeper than that. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. Jared Stillman here for Window Nation. It's getting cold. Boy, it did get cold this week. Oof. And your heating bills are on the rise. Your house's old and damaged windows are letting all the heat and your money go right out the window. Plus, if you live with somebody who's pregnant and then you got to keep it down and it's cold at night. Trust me. At the Stillman household. Good thing that there's Window Nation, because right now if you buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. This is a reliable, trustable company. This is who I trust. That's right, Window Nation. Again, they're a great company, great people. I know them. I just trust me on this if you're looking to replace windows. Again, buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free, plus pay nothing for 24 months. And you'll love your windows like Albert, who said great value, great product, and great customer service. But hurry up, because the sale ends October 31st. So schedule a fast in-home estimate with their pros at 866-90Nation or at windownation.com. That's Window Nation, 866-90Nation, windownation.com.
Yeah, I think he's seeing things well. He's understanding what's trying to get done. You know, he's found completions at a bit of a higher rate, which has been good. Now we gotta find the balance of being aggressive still and being smart with the football, and then still completing the balls when they're there to be completed. And again, sometimes they're not exciting completions, but they're effective and efficient. But we certainly got to find ways to get the ball, down the field a little bit more, and let him do things that he's good at as well. So there's been some growth in some of the intermediate and underneath things and decision making, and then we still got to keep that aggressiveness with him as well.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan saying all good things about Will Levis, none of which are probably true, but he's saying them and it probably makes him feel better about it. I guess. I don't know. So I have not called for Will Levis's benching. Ian, back me up on that.
I think that's fair.
I haven't called for it. And I've said many times, I don't really care. If you bench him and you play Mason Rudolph, you'll win some more games. You'll pick 6th in the draft instead of maybe picking 1st or 2nd. And if you want to get Jaden Daniels, you're going to have to pick 1st or 2nd. So keep that in mind. But personally, if I was Brian Callahan, I'd bench Will Levis, even if that meant the owner threatening to fire me over it. Again, the owner's involved in the quarterback decision. And if you want to switch out the quarterback, you have to talk to the owner before you're allowed to do it. But if I was Brian Callahan, I think I may be at a point where I'd go to the owner and say, I'm benching him. And when the owner says, you can't do it, if the owner says that, I'd say, well, then you're going to have to fire me. Like, you're going to have to fire me today. 5 games into my tenure, you're going to have to fire me and pay me for the next 5 years if you want Will Levis to play quarterback, because I am not going to keep him out there. And here's why. It's one thing that Levis stinks, which we all know. That's one thing. In fact, Callahan's probably part of the problem, because Levis, no matter how bad he looks right now, wasn't this bad last year. But it's the constant chucking everybody else under the bus, the including everybody in the problem, the lack of accountability from Will Levis that is really starting to set me off. That if I was the coach and this was a reflection of me and I had to manage the other 52 guys, I would say this is enough for me to say, you go sit down. And this is an example. This was after the game on Sunday, Will Levis at the podium talking about the team's crappy performance. Also, which was highlighted by his crappy performance.
That's the NFL. That's how it's going to be. It's just about giving your team a chance to win in the last 5% of the game, and we've had 3 of those games, and we haven't won any of them. So we got to start figuring out how to score some points in the fourth quarter, and it starts with all of us. We can't point any fingers, and we got to just look inside and what we can do better to put ourselves in a better position. But we can't have the performances we've had in the fourth quarter if we expect to be, a playoff football team. So
it starts with all of us. We can't point fingers. It's everybody. We have to do better. We have to score more points in the fourth quarter. We. You guys watch the games. Is it a we problem or is it a me problem? Again, when you do well, and maybe you're carrying the team, Patrick Mahomes needs to go to the podium and say, we did well. We did this. We did that, to make everybody feel included. But nobody wants to feel included when the team stinks, especially when it's not their fault. You're saying we need to do better. Does DeAndre Hopkins need to do better? Nick Westbrook-Akine got 1 target and it was a touchdown. Does he need to do better? We. Now, how about Will Levis's interception? The one that he lollipopped up into the air? Was it Will Levis's fault for that? You tell me, Will Levis, this was him on Sunday again.
Yeah, I think I could have given myself some more depth away. Peter came up, told me he got a little push, but I can't let that be the reason for a pick. But that was one of the throws today where I kind of felt the lack of arm strength or whatever, where I feel like a healthier day, I'm putting a better ball on it on more of a line. So it's frustrating. We were able to get the ball back and still get an opportunity after that where we didn't make it work. But yes, that's a throw I'd like to have back for sure.
Okay, so on this, he's saying, Peter came up to me and said he got a little push, but I can't use that as an excuse. Then why bring it up? Then why tell everybody? Why say, well, Peter got a little, but I can't use that as an excuse? Just so you know, Peter got a little push, so don't totally blame me. And I couldn't, my arm, I just couldn't, I just couldn't get it there. Yesterday, Will Levis was asked about the Calvin Ridley connection. Again, Will Levis and Calvin Ridley, for whatever reason, it's not working. And here's what Will Levis said about that yesterday.
Calvin was 0 for 8 on target Sunday. Caught a third of the passes you guys have thrown his direction this season. How much of that do you think is you being off target?
I don't know off the top of my head. I definitely could have thrown some better balls to them here and there. But it's not something that we can point fingers at or whose fault it is. But he knows, I can be better. I know he can be better, and we all know we can be better at everything that we're doing. And we're all just trying to work as hard as we can to get those numbers up and trust that the connection that we know can be fruitful for us is gonna get there.
I can be better. He can be better. Shut up. Worry about yourself. To sit there and tell everybody, hey, he can be better too. Just so you know, it's not me. He can be. I mean, I'm screwing up because I blow, but he's also part of the problem. Tells me that Will Levis isn't a grown-up. He's not a grown-up. And look, I don't care. Go to Buffalo. Get waxed. Don't have the offensive lineman come pick you up off the ground the way Brett Kern pointed out, like, hey, when something happened to Tannehill or Mariota, those guys had to sprint to go get them up off the ground. That's okay, because I don't care, because I want the number 1 pick. I want the number 2 pick. I'm fine with it. I don't care what. But if I was the coach and I'm hearing him saying, hey, Calvin Ridley can do better too, I'd sit his ass on the bench so fast, and I'd make the owner fire me if she was like, wait a minute, I thought this year was all about Will Levis and you want to bench him 5 games in. And I'd say, yeah, because if I don't, I'm losing the whole team. So if you want to keep me from benching him, you have to fire me. And I'd do it. But again, in Sunshine Land, it's like, they just ignore all of that stuff. By the way, is it a big deal that Will Levis is sitting here in these press conferences blaming his lack of arm strength on his interceptions, blaming Skoronski, saying we all need to do better? We're not going to put fingers. It's all of us. It's not just me. Calvin Ridley can do better. Trevor Maddich, who played in the NFL for over a decade, on our show on Tuesday.
Players watch their quarterback. They listen to what the quarterback says publicly. And if the quarterback is not taking responsibility for things, if the quarterback is throwing teammates under the bus and pointing fingers, then it makes it very difficult for that guy to lead. That's what happened to Zach Wilson with the Jets. I mean, he was the 2nd pick in the draft, all the talent in the world, but he didn't handle the press conferences very well. And when he struggled on the field, his teammates looked at the way he answered those questions and finally stopped believing in him as a leader. And so now he's a Denver Bronco. And that's the thing that Levis has got to avoid. But it's also up to the coaches to make sure that if there are things that are true, that they're the ones who say it.
But that's not what's happening here. Instead, what's happening here is the coach gets up there and tells us all the time, everything's great, everybody's great. It's a good thing that they criticized our play calling after the game. And the quarterback gets up there and says, we, and never says, I'm the problem. And you wonder why they didn't show up to practice hard yesterday? Because they've given up. Because they know their record's 1-4, and they know even though everybody in Sunshine Land says everything's okay, they know that's not the truth. And so if I was the coach, again, I'd make the owner fire me, but I'd bench Will Levis. But me personally, the radio host Titan fan I've given up on the season. I don't care. I don't care for, this general manager, this president of football operations. And as I said the other day, I'm like, hey, if you fire them and you hire a new guy, don't you want to let the new guy hire his own coach? Because we've seen what happens when you don't. I mean, I think it's a lost cause anyways, but that's a different feeling than if I were the coach. If I was the coach, I'd be trying to rope this thing together, and I could not. I could deal with my quarterback stinking and us trying to get through it. I cannot deal with him getting up there saying, we all need to be better. I cannot deal with him saying Calvin Ridley needs to be better. I can't even deal with him saying Skoronski told me he got to push, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse. Then don't bring it up, or else you're using it as an excuse. But I'm not the coach. They know everything, right? Yeah. I see it on Sunday. 615-737-1025 on Stillman and Company. And coming up next, I think I've realized something about Will Levis, that It's going to sound crass. It's going to sound rude, but it's the truth. We'll touch on it next. Tune in to 1025, 1063 The Game this Saturday at 6 o'clock for our college football game of the week. Vandy and Ball State. That's right. Presented by Twin Peaks Restaurants. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports.
You threw the coach under the bus once again. You threw him under the bus once again. And again, they didn't ask you to throw him under the bus. We got to get the plays in faster. We got to get it in and out of the huddle faster. What that means is, Callahan, get the plays in quicker. Get the plays in quicker so we can get up to the huddle quicker. That's what that means. And that may be going on. But again, you don't throw your coach under the bus. Have your coach thrown you under the bus? Hell no. He has every right to throw you under the bus, but he hasn't. That's the second time in 3 days you done threw your head coach under the bus. First, it was the shoulder. Your head coach didn't know anything about that as far as you were hurting. To his knowledge, you were okay. You were good to go. And then you come back a day later or 2 days later, and you say, well, yeah, we need to get in and out of the huddle. We need to get the plays. Well, that's something that you and the head coach need to be talking about.
That was D-Mace earlier today, and I said this to D-Mace, Willie, and Adam at the end of their show today. We were just chatting. And again, this is going to sound crass. It's going to sound rude. It's probably not going to be something that Ian would say, but I'm just going to say, you guys know me. I'm just going to call it how I see it. If you want to say the same thing about me, you can say the same thing about me. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Ian, I think I figured out what the problem with Will Levis is. Why he does dumb things on the field, why he says dumb things in the press, why he seems, always, I think I figured it out.
Okay.
I think he might just be stupid. Like, again, I know that sounds rude, but I think it's as direct as I can be. I think he might just be stupid. I mean, like, again, this idea that he's going to get up there with the media and just volunteer that they had a bad day of practice when nobody, I mean, we're not even allowed to watch practice. And he just gets up there and says, we had a bad day of practice today. We need to have a good day. Wasn't asked how practice was. Wasn't asked anything about practice. Was asked about the urgency. And in two parts of that, he threw the coach under the bus, where you heard Derek yelling and screaming in that last cut. And then he said, we had a bad day of practice. We have a good day tomorrow or whatever. We have a chance to be good tomorrow for what we put on tape, blah, 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 blah. Like, maybe he's just stupid. And while I'm sure he had good grades, I went to college with people that played sports that had good grades, and I'm not sure did a single homework assignment themselves. Not one. Now, some of those people are actually kind of smart. But I'm telling you, I don't care what his grades were. I don't care where he went to school. I don't care. He is so unaware of what a quarterback is actually supposed to be like. It is disheartening. But maybe it's just because he's so stupid. Maybe he's just stupid. You know, I mean, like, I hate to say it, but maybe it's because he's just stupid. Like, that's, and to think about it more, I used to think about this all the time when Antonio Brown would say something dumb. Or when Le'Veon Bell was with the Steelers. And remember that year where the Steelers franchise tagged him for a second time and he didn't want to play on the franchise tag, so he didn't show up. But if he showed up by week 7, then he could play and he wouldn't be able to be tagged again. But if he didn't show up by week 7 or whatever it was, he'd lose all of his money. I remember that. And I remember walking into the studio one day and seeing First Take was on the TV, and Max Kellerman, who was doing it at the time with Stephen A. Smith, they were debating, like, what does Le'Veon Bell mean by this tweet? Or what does Odell Beckham? And I'm like, just say it. They're stupid. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what guy's stupid. But I know on TV, they don't ever want anybody to say, you know, oh, don't call somebody stupid or what. But sometimes you got to call it how it is. And this guy might just be stupid. Like, that might just be the problem with Will Levis, is that's why when Will Levis is like, gosh, I shouldn't have flicked the ball against Chicago, but he did it anyways. And the coach said, don't do it. And he went out there and he lost the game. He might just be stupid, period. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, when Marcus Mariota was here, he took the blame for everything, even when it wasn't his fault. Did you see Derrick Henry's interaction with Marcus Mariota on Sunday? Ian, did you see that video?
I did, yes.
Do you think Derrick Henry has respect for Marcus Mariota? He loves that man.
Looked like it.
I love that man. When I went to the Kenny Chesney concert at Arrowhead Stadium this summer, I was, you know, we were backstage at the Kenny Chesney, and they had, you know, the Chiefs locker room was where the band kind of set up, but then the visiting locker room was also open where they were doing different kinds of stuff. And I was in the visiting locker room at Arrowhead Stadium, and it kind of brought back, because I hadn't been to Arrowhead since the 2019 AFC title game. And it kind of brought me back to after the game was over and guys were, packing up, and the team had lost the AFC title game, even though they had a 17-7 lead. And I talked to Marcus off to the side. And I said to Marcus, I said, hey, I just wanted to tell you that I really appreciate you over the last 5 years or whatever it was. Because I told Marcus, I said, you're always a good dude. No matter what people said about you, no matter what went your way, you were always a good dude. And I always appreciated that about you, no matter what. And Marcus and I talked for a little bit. And I have an immense amount of respect for Marcus. So a year later, when Marcus is with the Raiders and Derek Carr gets hurt on Thursday Night Football and Marcus gets put in there, I want good things to happen to Marcus. Now, Kaharski will cry like a baby and he'll say, you don't care what happened, Marcus. You don't know what happened. But the reality is I want good things to happen to Marcus. He's such a good guy. Not a great quarterback, but such a good guy. And I'm not saying Levis is a bad guy, but I'm just saying, again, the quarterback is, hey, it's my fault. Now when it's not your fault, you don't have to take the blame, but you also don't have to lay it on everybody. When it's not your fault, you can just kind of say, hey, we all have to be better, and it starts with me, period. And that's it. One texter into the text line says, I just think this team needs some leadership. They do have leadership. Right now, it's playing running back in Baltimore. That's the leadership. I mean, again, your team leaders, the team captains, there's Will Levis, who, again, we went over the fact that he might be stupid. Cushenberry, who they do push out there. He's like the new Bayern. Every Monday morning that they lose and they have to give players up, it's always Lloyd Cushenberry. He's always the representative of the offense, because it's like there's nobody's going to be really mad at him, and he's not going to say anything that gets him in trouble, so let's stick him out there. Again, the role Kevin Byard played for years and played it very, very well. But the other guys that are captains on the team, the other guys that are Jeffrey Simmons gets up there in front of the media and says, hey, but sacks aren't everything. Don't be mad at me. Simmons isn't a leader. We went over that when he got into Buck's Kool-Aid at practice, that he wasn't a real leader. And I agree. The Titans lack leadership. And the Titans lack leadership in the organization. When's the owner around? Jerry Jones is getting crucified for his overreaction. Boy, did he lose his cool on his weekly call-in in Dallas. But I see the Jerry Jones weekly call-in in Dallas. And I'm like, at least Jerry's doing an interview. When's the last time Amy had to answer real questions? And the answer, by the way, is never. We hear any press conferences from Chad Brinker lately about the AI analytic model and why the team sucks so bad? Rand Carthon doing it? No. He can do interviews during practice and training camp when everything's all roses and sunshine, but we don't hear anything now. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. Stu is up next here on the program. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Stu.
Hey, yeah, it appears to me that Levis, he might not be stupid, but he is absolutely delusional. How is he not blaming himself for the things that are happening on this team? It is 99% him. I heard yesterday a bunch of people calling in about the play calling. Oh, the play calling. They need better play calling. They need somebody else to call better. It doesn't matter who's calling your plays. If you have a quarterback that can't execute simple throws and simple play schemes, how in the world is anybody calling different plays going to help? This guy's delusional, and he needs to step up and take responsibility for his sorry play. That's all I got.
So I think what's happened, thank you for your call, Stu. I think what's happened is, and I don't want to pass judgment on Will Levis's parents or how he was raised or whatever, but I think, we kind of have this private school problem, which is a lot of times the student comes home and blames the teacher, and the parents then blame the teacher instead of actually doing a fact-finding mission to figure out what the problem is. Because sometimes it is the teacher, but most of the times it's not. Mike Vrabel, again, say whatever you want about Vrabel. We know that Vrabel would not tolerate Will Levis playing the way he's playing and getting up there and saying Calvin Ridley needs to play better. I can promise you Mike Vrabel would not tolerate that. But again, there's the difference between being held accountable and being coddled. And if there's anything I know about the way Brian Callahan coaches this team, he is a coddler to the nth degree. And that's a problem too. 615-737-1025. Chris Sanders joins us next. Join me, Chris, and Derek at Twin Peaks in Cool Springs this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30 ahead of the Titans and the Bills. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. This Saturday from 1 to 6, New Heights Brewing at 928 Representative John Lewis Way South is having an afternoon of free live music and good vibes before the Post Malone concert at Nissan Stadium, benefiting the relief efforts in East Tennessee, presented by us right here at Cromwell Media. $1 from every draft pint will be donated to East Tennessee Foundation to help those in need from the devastation of Hurricane Helene. More details can be found at thegamenashville.com/events. Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Chris.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel about your football team after the disastrous loss to Indianapolis?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, I watched the Indianapolis coach, and I know that they beat the Tennessee Titans, but that wasn't a good Indianapolis coach team. I mean, you got Flacco, and you got a couple of players that can make plays. But in my opinion, if you look on paper, the Tennessee Titans was better. And I just kind of look at the whole situations. The stars from the Colts made plays, and the stars for the Tennessee Titans, they made plays. So that's how you kind of look at it.
Chris, what do you make of the fact that this team is probably the worst team in the NFL right now?
I'm not saying it's the worst. I think Carolina is pretty bad. You know, here's the thing, man. I mean, you got a lot of good players. You got some guys that can make plays on defense. You got some guys that can make plays on offense. I just think that, this is why it's so important to make sure your quarterback play is good. It doesn't have to be exceptional. It's got to be good. But it just shows you how important a quarterback is, because if you look at some of the games they played earlier, the Tennessee Titans would have won some of those games, but it's just because of the quarterback play.
So would you bench the quarterback then?
I mean, I wouldn't bench him right now. I just think that, if he makes a couple of more mistakes, I think you do have to put Rudolph in and try.
How many more though? Because I mean,
season.
every game it's something new.
I say maybe 1 or 2 more games. I mean, you're gonna have to make a decision, because right now you're 1-4, and if you're going to lose both of these games, it's going to be a tough, hole to really dig out of. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to make some quick decisions really, really quick, because you're 1-4. I know the AFC South is not as prominent as it was in the last couple of years, but you got to make a decision, try to turn this thing around.
Chris Sanders is our guest here on the program. What do we make of this Ridley-Levis connection? And then after the game, Ridley's mad that he's not getting targets at the beginning of the game. And then Brian Callahan says it's a good thing that Ridley said that. And D-May says it's not a good thing that Ridley said that.
No,
and then Ridley said, I just want to win, and I'm frustrated that we're not winning. But what do we make of the whole deal?
Listen, let me make this very clearly. I would love to get 8 attempts in one game. I don't care if it's in the 5th quarter, 6th quarter, 7th. It doesn't matter. As a wide receiver, you have to make sure that you're ready at all time. Because look, when Ridley dropped a couple of those footballs, they were still in the game. If he makes those plays and convert those third downs, you never know what might happen. Listen, I understand his frustration. I understand he wants to catch the ball. I understand that, because me, Derek Mason, Kevin Dyson, we have always been in that situation to where, we want the ball, but, you got to make the play when the balls come to you. You didn't get just 1 attempt, 2 attempts, 3 attempts. You got 8 attempts. It's not that I understand you want to get the ball early. I understand you got to get in the rhythm.
Some of those passes, though, were awful.
Listen, some of them were awful. Okay, say 2 or 3 of them were awful. You still had 4 or 5 of them that you should have made. I mean, there's one on the sidelines you should have made. There's one when you made a dig route you should have made. But at the end of the day, when the ball's thrown to you at the moment, you got to make sure that you catch the pass. So, it's just that this is where this is my opinion, and I'll never put nobody down, but this is where you got to be a professional. Say, you know what? Let me figure out a way to where even if the ball is thrown in the 5th quarter or the 4th quarter, I got to make the play.
Okay, put yourself in Ridley's shoes. Will Levis asked about the Ridley connection yesterday, said, we're not going to point fingers. I can do better, and he can do better. If you were Ridley, would you be pissed that Will Levis got up there and said he can do better?
Behind closed doors, yes, I will be a little upset. When you say that he needs to do better, first of all, you just point the finger at yourself and say, okay, what can I do better? But when you say he, that means you're pointing him. That means you're dropping the ball also. So I just think that he could have reworded that a little bit. So, collectively, we both need to get better. And I think that's how he should have handled it.
He should have just said, I need to get better, and leave it at that.
I know. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, too, Jared. Just looking at Will Levis's quarterback plays, he's still doing the same thing he did, when he played against the Packers. He's staring down the receiver, and the DBs are just paying attention to where his eyes go. So, if he says he needs to get better, Those are the little things he needs to do to get better as a quarterback and being the leader of this team.
Chris Sanders is with us. Will Levis volunteered yesterday at the podium that the Titans had a bad day of practice. And I'm thinking to myself,
Oh,
you just got embarrassed
I
by the
heard it.
Indianapolis Colts.
I
You're
heard it.
1-4.
I
You've
heard
got Buffalo upcoming. The team's terrible. I mean, and you show up for Wednesday practice and you have a bad day of practice. Chris, to me, that's
Wow.
the sign of a team quitting on its coach. Am I going too over the top with that?
I don't know if they're quitting on their coach. I think they're just not comfortable with what's going on. Does that make sense? I know they're frustrated, but I just talked about it, 4 or 5 seconds ago, that this is what it means to be a professional. You can't just say, okay, we're 1-4, the season's over. I might get traded, this and that and that. Can I say this in the right way? That's a loser's limp. When I say a loser's limp is where you're blaming everybody else. You're coming to practice. You're not practicing hard. But a champion's limp is saying, you know what? In spite of that, we're 1-4. I'm going to come back. I'm going to work hard. I know this kind of sounds cliche-ish, but I got to come back and I got to work hard. I got to do what I need to do, the best way I can. Just look at the years that we played when me and Derek Mason, when our teams were terrible, when I played in Houston and we were like 4-6, but you still had guys who practice hard. You still had leadership to demand the guys get the job done. So maybe Will Levis or, some of the quote, leaders on that team demanded those guys practice and do what they need to do.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like they didn't. And I think back to what you always say, when there are 2 choices to be made, what are the 2 choices?
The 2 choices to get bitter or get better. And that's what it boils down to.
If you don't show up to practice on Wednesday, what's that tell you about the state of the Titans?
And I'm not saying that's the state yet, but if I'm a coach, and just like right now, we're 3-5 in Montgomery Bell Academy. I watch the body language of my players. I look in their eyes, and if you have a glossy eye and you're looking away, that means you're not connected. But if I look in the eyes, which I do with the receivers that I coach, I say, listen, we're going to go to work, this and that. They're looking straight at me and they say, yes, sir, coach. And they come back the next day and they do everything they can. That's a winner mentality. But a loser's limp is coming to practice, slouched down in the meeting room, not paying attention to the coaches, going out there running a sorry route or not really paying attention. So just like what you said, you got 2 choices, big dog, is to get better. And you got to look in the mirror and see if that's what you want to do.
Last one for you, Chris. Any faith on Sunday against Buffalo?
I mean, yeah, I do have a little bit of faith. I do. I mean, I think they can go down there and try to do something. That's all I'm gonna say. They're gonna try to do something, but they're gonna. This is hard, man, because this is a
they suck.
Type. Listen, this is a different type. And I'm not comparing coaches. This is where I like Mike Vrabel, because even though he did some things that were outlandish, he still is a great motivator. I'm not saying that Coach Callahan is not a great motivator, but Mike Vrabel got those guys ready when they were 2-4 and went down to Kansas City and beat them. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So this is where we're going to see if Coach Callahan is a great motivator. Because if they go down and beat the Bills and beat the Detroit Lions the following week, then you got me of being a great motivator. So it's all going to be dependent on how Coach Callahan motivates these guys to win. That's how I look at it.
Ian, I think Chris, the way what he just answered is the equivalent of me saying fire everybody.
No, I didn't. No.
That's as far as you go, Chris. What you just said, when I ask you if you have any faith in the game and you're like, that's as far as you go.
Because there's always hope. The reason why I say that it's always hope. They were 2-4 years ago, came back and went to the AFC Championship game. Yeah. So anything can happen. So what I'm saying is if Coach Callahan can motivate these guys and believe in what he's believing in, anything can happen in Buffalo and anything can happen in Detroit.
He can't even get him to practice hard on Wednesday.
But that's a player situation. If I'm motivating you and your attitude sucks, then there's another thing that I say. You trusting or you're buying. You're buying in because you have to, or you're trusting it, or you're trusting the process. If you buy in, get your butt out of here. But if you're trusting it, just go win some ball games. That's how I handle it.
Chris Sanders, as always, on our program. Chris, we will see you on Sunday.
Yes, sir. Love you, brother. Bye-bye.
Yep. Stillman and Company. Chris brought up Mike Vrabel. And there is a former NFL general manager that says the Titans chose this. We'll do it next. 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Bridgestone Arena, Preds, and Oilers tonight, 7 o'clock, right here on 1025 the game. TD will join us for the TD Power Hour at 4 o'clock. So, Mike Lombardi, former NFL general manager, it feels like, has been in the pocket of Mike Vrabel for a while. Ian, would you say that that's probably fair?
I guess so.
He has been on the Titans. Last year, when everyone said that everything was great between Carthon and Vrabel, he kept saying, Tennessee, they got problems in the front office. They fired Vrabel. He went crazy. He has been very staunch kind of in this belief. And yet, that doesn't mean that he's wrong. Because if you remember, it was Mike Lombardi who was the first one that said the Titans were asking Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. Mike Lombardi is a former NFL general manager. He may not have been the best former NFL general manager, but it would seem to me that he probably has pretty strong contacts still in the NFL. So Mike Lombardi on his podcast, the GM Shuffle, was discussing Daniel Jones with his co-host when the conversation turned to Will Levis, and he said this.
Tennessee, Michael, Will Levis, they know the answer. No, I'm serious. Like, they know the answer. They have to. If they make the Jones decision to keep going with Levis, they're done. He gives the other team the ball consistently.
And he's terrible. He threw for, what, he had 23 attempts for 96 yards yesterday? I mean, if anybody else plays, if Mason Rudolph plays quarterback, they win that game. I mean,
yes.
See, but here's the whole thing. They made a choice, Patrick. This whole theme of the pod is choices, right? They chose Rand Carthon and Will Levis over Mike Vrabel. That's what your franchise did. Rand Carthon convinced the owner that Will Levis is the guy. He's not the guy at Ocean City High School, let alone the guy at Tennessee Titans. I mean, like, seriously, I can't even imagine that you would put your stock and faith. I mean, first of all, how the hell does he get a commercial? Like, don't you have to do something to get a commercial to be an endorser? Like, what has he done? I don't give a shit if he puts mayonnaise in his coffee or not. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this guy's terrible. Malik Willis said, I swear to God, lightning struck me dead. I thought I would have never said that. Malik Willis played better in Green Bay than this guy's ever played.
He's not wrong. And I do ask this question, which is, again, he said Rand Carthon convinced the owner that Will Levis was the guy and Mike Vrabel wasn't interested in that. Again, he said they chose Rand Carthon and Will Levis over Mike Vrabel. Now, I think it might be a little deeper than that, with how Vrabel pissed off the owner. But again, I think the reality, we were told all last year there weren't any issues, and clearly there are issues. Let's just say Lombardi's right. And I have nothing that would tell me that he's not. So he's the only one that's going to go on record and say it. So I'll give him that. If Lombardi's right, then I have to ask this question. How could you possibly let this current administration pick the next quarterback? Before last season, every single person in this town, including me, thought that Mike Vrabel was a great coach. Now, look, the coaching staff hires were underwhelming, and the excuses were starting to become more obnoxious, and I get it. And plus, I think Vrabel is one of those coaches that has a shelf life. It's like he couldn't play for Nick Saban for 10 years. That's why he was better in college. But there's no doubt that Mike Vrabel as a coach was better than what we've seen so far from the Sunshine Department. So again, if Lombardi is right, and they chose the GM and his group that haven't ever won anything and won a power struggle over the former coach of the year because of a quarterback who stinks, you can't possibly let these people use next year's number 1, number 2 draft pick, right? I mean, that's just, again, there's a lot of assets the team has that matter or don't matter or whatever. But there is nothing that is going to be more important than the number 1 draft pick that they have next year. I kept saying all offseason, I go, this is Will Levis insurance. If Will Levis stinks, you do not trade your first round draft pick because it may be number 1 or number 2 overall. And that might be your next trek for a quarterback. And even if it's not your next trek for a quarterback, the Detroit Lions had the number 2 pick, and they drafted the number 1 player in a draft that did not have good quarterbacks in it. And guess what? It ended up being Aiden Hutchinson. So that kind of pick can absolutely alter your franchise. We saw what John Robinson did when he traded that first pick in 2016. And it ended up being Jack Conklin and Derrick Henry and Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis. So if the owner was deciding what to do with her franchise, and Mike Lombardi's right, and she got talked into Rand Carthon over Mike Vrabel by Rand Carthon, who sold her that this quarterback is the guy. And she's sitting up in her box and she's watching Malik Willis absolutely slice and dice the Titans while Will Levis is throwing pick sixes. Or she's sitting up in her box and she sees a Colts team with no Jonathan Taylor, with no DeForest Buckner, with no, if she's sitting in the box, she sees that, and she sees them throwing for 95 yards. Can she really let her get out of jail free card go to the same guys that got her in the mess in the first place? And I don't see how the answer can be yes. I mean, everybody tells me, like, you cannot fire this group after 2 years, which is hysterical to me because Mike Mularkey got fired after 2 years and he won a playoff game. So apparently our standards have changed. But I'm told, like, no, you cannot fire this group. Even though they're the ones, again, reportedly, that went to the owner and said, no, Will Levis is the guy. Let us find our coach, and we will find the coach that works best with Will Levis. And they found Coach Sunshine. It's a good thing that Calvin Ridley called out my play calling after the game. And I don't get it. Again, what are our standards here? John Robinson got to pick one quarterback, and it was Ryan Tannehill. And while you can argue that maybe Tom Brady would have been the better choice, and I would say that Tom Brady would have been the better choice than Ryan Tannehill, Ryan Tannehill did a lot more winning than Will Levis is ever going to do. So, again, I don't worry about this season. I don't. It's lost cause. The team stinks. The quarterback stinks. But the light at the end of the tunnel is that number 1 pick. That is the light. That is the hope, is that for whatever reason, that number 1 pick, if it's number 1, if it's number 2, if it's number 3, that it can become a star player or multiple star players or a star quarterback. That's the hope. And you're telling me that the guys that are going to make the decision on this are the guys that, again, brought you this movie that is terrible right now, and we have to watch it every Sunday. Somebody explain to me why we should do that. Please, somebody out there tell me what the reasoning behind this is. And you know what my favorite thing is? This is what the stupid teams do. And this is what you're about to do. This is what the stupid teams do. The stupid teams will say, okay, well, we can't fire this guy even though he hasn't performed. We're going to fire the guys that do perform, but now we've got this guy that hasn't performed, but we can't fire him. It's not fair. We haven't let them have their quarterback, even though they did draft the last quarterback, but that doesn't technically count. So we'll give them another one. So they're going to use the number 2 pick. And if that guy, again, he's not going to win as a rookie because for the most part, rookie quarterbacks don't win, although C.J. Stroud won and Jaden Daniels is winning. They're not going to win. And when they don't win, they're going to get fired. Because if this happens next year, then nobody will say, well, it's too early to fire them. So then everybody gets fired, and then a new GM and a new coach come in, and guess what they're left with? The other guy's quarterback. That doesn't matter. Like, what are we doing? But I guess everybody, Joe Rexrode yesterday in Jerry versus Joe said if he had to pick between John Robinson or Rand Carthon's group, he would pick John Robinson. And then said we can't fire the group because, well, it would just look bad. It's not about looking good or looking bad. It's about winning games. It's about getting players that can play and not giving yourself off-season of the year awards. But again, got yourself into this mix in the first place, and, I said it. I said it when they fired John Robinson. I did. I said, I remember what it was like when the Titans didn't have a good GM. I remember what it was like when Mike Munchak and Kim Wisenhunt were the coaches. And I said, I don't want to go back to that. And the Titans, no, you don't understand. We'll have analytics now. And here we are in the middle of October, knowing that the season is over. And again, I'm just praying that somebody who knows football will come in here to pick the next quarterback and not the people that are doing it now that, again, don't value right tackle. Mike Lombardi told you. And you can say all you want that you don't believe it, but, I mean, he was right the first time. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. And by the way, there was something that I heard on the broadcast, the TV broadcast. I went searching for it all day today, and I could not find it. But this is how sad it has gotten in Sunshine Land for the Titans. And even the sunshine they're trying to pump to CBS is not, in my opinion, it's not what we're looking for here. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
The only reason to keep playing him right now is because you think he has a chance to develop into your future at quarterback, and you want to see if he can play through his problems. That's the only reason to keep playing him. And the problem is that not only are you losing games because of him, because of bad turnovers, not just turnovers, but bad turnovers. But after a while, the team is going to look at the coaches in the front office, and they're going to say, well, what are we doing here then? If all we're doing is working through problems of a guy that hasn't shown that he can get through those problems because he keeps making the same mistakes over and over again, apparently, then why are we working like crazy in trying to win games and trying to do everything we can to pull this team out of the fire when you're not giving us a chance to pull this team out of the fire by playing the best guys at the best position for each position? Now, they know that when you have a young quarterback, meaning the locker room, when you have a young quarterback, there is some slack given to the coaches that guy's going to make some mistakes and we're going to work through those mistakes because of the bright future. But at this point, when you've lost all these games and you've got a couple tough ones on the way and the young quarterback keeps on making similar mistakes, then it creates a culture in the locker room that's very hard to overcome.
That was Trevor on the program on Tuesday, basically saying, yeah, I mean, there's really not a whole lot of reason to keep playing the young quarterback because it's going to do you more harm than good. So I spent all day today trying to find the cut of when Aditi Kinkabale, the sideline reporter, I think I got her name right there, Ian.
Pretty close.
When Aditi on the sideline, the sideline reporter in the NFL is so useless. It used to be that the person was on the sideline there to kind of follow someone back in the injury and say, well, Bob, so-and-so rolled his ankle. They're working on it in the locker room. I remember when Jim Gray was outside the Chicago Bulls locker room during the NBA Finals when Scottie Pippen was getting his back worked on and kind of keeping us updated on whether or not Scottie was going to come back in the game. But as far as what they do now, they don't really do a lot. And so they just throw down to him and we talked to him during the week, Aditi, and he said, but I kept looking for this cut because Aditi Kinkabale came out on the broadcast and she said, and Ian, I think you probably heard this too, that she said that she talked to Rand Carthon and Rand Carthon was preaching patience with Will Levis because of Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Did you hear that?
I think I might have heard that.
So I was looking for it all morning this morning, trying to find it, and I could not find it, which means I'll find it next week when I don't need it. But again, we all heard it. Hey, let's be patient because Baker Mayfield has turned out to be okay and Sam Darnold has turned out to be okay. What utter drivel. Let me just say this. First of all, I am the president of the Sammy D fan club. You know that. I liked that band before it was popular. But both Darnold and Mayfield have one big flaw, and that is that they are mid-level quarterbacks. I kept saying with Sam Darnold, Ian, did I not keep saying with Sam Darnold that I think, hey, he can be as good as Tua in Miami? I never said he can win the Super Bowl.
I think you just thought people were underestimating him.
Right. When everybody thought Jared Goff was the best quarterback in the league, I was like, he ain't that, guys. And then when everybody thought Jared Goff, Robbie, I'm talking to you, when everybody thought, and Buck, when everybody thought Jared Goff was awful, I was like, he's not that bad. And now people are starting to go the other way about it. And I'm like, again, Jared Goff's a mid-level quarterback. Jared Goff's the same as those guys. You get Jared Goff a good team, Jared Goff will win some games. Can Jared Goff win you the Super Bowl? I don't know. His defense held Tom Brady to 13 points. They scored 3. They were only in the game because of one of the worst calls in the history of the NFL, and he still couldn't win the Super Bowl. So, again, I don't know. So that's the first thing. So hold on. We have to wait to see if this guy can end up being Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold. You could just go sign Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. They're going to be Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnolds that you can sign this year. Daniel Jones might be that guy. There's going to be a handful of guys who are not on their teams next year that, hey, maybe they were in some bad situations, and when you put them in good situations, they can play a little bit better. But again, we're talking about Super Bowl quarterbacks like C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels and those guys. Like in Washington, they don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, but they think they're probably going to win a Super Bowl because they got Jaden Daniels. So the general manager's telling Aditi, well, maybe he's Sam Darnold. So let's hope. What? No, before the year it was maybe he's Dan Marino, let's hope. Now it's maybe he's Sam Darnold? Talk about moving the goalposts. And then, not only that, let's not pretend like those guys had no success before their current spots. Baker Mayfield won a playoff game in Cleveland. And you see how stupid the owner is in Cleveland. So imagine the fact that he actually won a playoff game there. He was rookie of the year. And then Sam Darnold, and nobody knows this except for me and Gentry Estes because we're the only two that watched it, but Sam Darnold was 4-2 in the last 6 games when he took over as a starter in crap Carolina. And Carolina, that was the end of the 2022 season. They tried Baker out there. That didn't work. They tried PJ Walker. That didn't work. Finally, the owner fired the coach, and he gave up on the season, and he got out of the business. And Sam Darnold went 4-2, and they had a shot at the playoffs at the end of the year. Do you know how many games in a year and, Ian, what would you say, a third into the season?
For this year?
Yeah, we're a third in.
Quarter,
5-6
third,
games.
yeah, something like that.
What is it, 6 times 3? That is, 18?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're a third into the season.
Mm-hmm.
So a third into the season. So a season and a third. Sam Darnold in 6 games won 4 for Carolina. Carolina's won 3 games since. So what you're saying, Rand Carthon, when you tell Aditi Kinkabale that, hey, let's be patient with this quarterback because Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. What you're telling the fan base through Aditi is, let's be patient, and maybe this guy can be Ryan Tannehill. Again, maybe in can. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
But if I want to wait for Ryan Tannehill, why don't you just go get Ryan Tannehill?
The problem with those two comparisons are they're doing good for their not originally drafted team.
Right. And what was one of my big sticking points with Darnold? I mean, again, let's think about Mayfield and Darnold. Didn't work out for Mayfield in Cleveland. Do we think Cleveland's a good organization? Didn't work out for Darnold with the Jets. Do we think of the Jets as a well-run operation? Didn't work out for either of them in Carolina. So again, when Rand's sitting there saying like, hey, these guys could be Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, I'm sitting here thinking, right, and you're Cleveland, you're the Jets, and that's what I said when they fired John Robinson at 7-5. Oh no, you're the dumb teams. And no, Jared, Amy put her foot down. And I'm like, no, that's what stupid teams do. And so now it's like, well, maybe this guy, maybe he can be like this, and maybe he can. I mean, I hope. But again, you're asking for going into the year. It wasn't like, hey, we've hired Brian Callahan to turn him into Sam Darnold. What a joke. What a joke. And again, it's like, well, let's move the goalpost now. Again, the hope was let's turn him into Justin Herbert. Let's turn him into Dan Marino. Let's turn him into, a big, strong, powerful arm quarterback that can push it down the field. And now it's let's throw screen passes all the time, put the ball 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage, check it down to the back, and let's hope one day, if we're lucky, if we hold hands in a circle, that he can be Sam Darnold. You can sign Sam Darnold. I don't understand, why they would think that's a good thing to say. 615-737-1025 on the program. Here, 615-737-1025. So there's a move the Titans made today. So you know what it is because they only made one move. And I did not care about it. And then I saw something that sent me over the edge. We will do that next here on Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
obviously something happened between the time that you know he got here till now, that he wasn't pleased about it. I'm sure it was the playing time. I'm sure he was told that he would get some playing time, that he would be in the rotation, not necessarily a starter, but he would be in the rotation. And he didn't find himself in the rotation for whatever reason. For what reason, I have no idea. Was it because of injury? He wasn't playing, early on, or he didn't practice, during 2 days much. But they understood that when they brought him in. They knew what his practice regimen or his practice habits would be, just like they knew what D-Hop practice regimen and his practice habits would be. Again, there must have been some miscommunication between he and the Titans brass, or he and the head coach, or he and the defensive coordinator.
That was Derek talking about Jamal Adams today. If you have noticed, the Titans released Jamal Adams. Hate to say I told you so on that, but I told you so. But apparently it said in the bottom, and again, this is why the Titans are such liars. And TD's going to be with us at the top of the hour. And again, a reporter's job is to report. So according to the report that TD has at ESPN.com, quote, the primary issue from the Titans' point of view was a lack of practice, according to a team source. What? What happened to maintenance days and we've got a program for everybody and L'Jarius Sneed's never going to practice, but it's okay. And that sounds like a lame-ass excuse from the Titans. The truth is Jamal Adams sucks. We told you that when they signed him. But Jared, for the league minimum, this is going to be a great low risk, high reward move. Okay. According to TD, the veteran defensive back said he's healthy and ready to help out the next team he joins. So Jamal Adams doesn't think he's hurt. Again, another type of, the Titans said one thing, the truth happens to probably more be like another thing, and it is what it is. But I don't care about that. Because again, I knew when they signed Jamal Adams, I knew that Jamal Adams was toast, and I wasn't worried about it. What I said was, you better not think you're done at safety. And they did go out and sign Quandre Diggs. So they released Jamal Adams at 9 a.m. this morning? Didn't care about it. I actually laughed this morning when I heard Robbie and Rexroad say the breaking news. And then they were like, well, I guess Jeffrey Simmons should probably go apologize to the media after crapping his pants all over the media saying, Jamal Adams kind of sucks at this point in his career. Thought that was kind of funny. But that was it. Then I saw John Glennon's tweet. Now, let me just say this. I don't watch the Chargers, so I don't know who's good on them and who's not. According to John Glennon, quote, the Titan signing of Jamal Adams was presumably one of the factors that led Elijah Molden to seek a fresh start. Elijah Molden was traded to the Chargers in exchange for a 2026 7th-round pick. Woo! According to John Glennon, Molden has played in 5 games for the Chargers, starting 3, has 2 interceptions, 22 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and 1 fumble recovery. So the Titans got rid of Elijah Molden for less than a bag of footballs because they felt like, hey, we're not going to have any playing time because we've got Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams and Amani Hooker, so we're going to let you go. And then he goes to the Chargers and plays better than he has ever played for the Tennessee Titans. How many times is this going to happen? Where Malik Willis gets traded to the Green Bay Packers, and as soon as he goes to the Green Bay Packers, he is better than he ever was for the Tennessee Titans. What's next? They're going to trade PT, and he's going to go off and turn into Trent Williams? Elijah Molden has 22 tackles. Jamal Adams, I think, played 22 snaps. And so I'm like, when it comes to the Titans and it comes to somebody tweeted me and said, what do you think of the Jamal Adams release today? I don't care because it doesn't make a difference. But all I could say was, let Rand cook, baby. A 7th-round draft pick in 2026? That's it? And he goes off to the Chargers and is now starting and is good. And the reason you got rid of him was for a guy who was basically down to his last nail And you said, well, we're going to have a special. He didn't practice during the preseason. And it was, no, we got a maintenance program for him. And now you're like, oh, well, he didn't practice enough for us. Stop with the bull crap. But they can't do it. They can't do it. According to a source, a problem was that he didn't practice. You mean you thought you were getting a healthy Jamal Adams? You thought that you were getting the Jamal? We're like, yeah, Jamal Adams has played 9 games over the last 3 years or whatever it was. But he'll be okay with us. Well, he doesn't really practice that much. Do you think? Like the guy that was last year said he was like, yeah, I had to be in a wheelchair last year because I was so hurt. You thought he'd be able to practice every day? Of course you didn't. But now you're lying because you want to not look stupid. And that's the problem, is that they are in fact stupid. And it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy because every time something like this happens, we just shrug it off and say, oh, well, it is what it is. And then we never hold anybody accountable except for the guys that win. Mike Mularkey wins, we got to fire him. I mean, he can't do it. He's winning too much. Ian, give me the Snoop Dogg. I cannot tell you. I've been thinking about this again because what I just don't like is I don't like the lying. That's the word I'm going to use. The lying that I get from some of these fans when they look at the last 2 years of the Titans and think that it's acceptable to see the performances and the personnel moves that we've seen, that the Sundays are okay. And I'm thinking, well, it wasn't okay when Mike Mularkey took over the worst team in the NFL and won a playoff game in year 2, but we had to fire him. And John Robinson won 61% of his games, but we had to fire him. Could not go on a day longer as general manager, even though the trade deadline had passed and there was no draft and no free agency and really nothing for the GM to do. But we couldn't go on a day longer. We couldn't this, we couldn't. Mike Vrabel again, and I thought it was time for Vrabel, but I thought it was time for a cleaning of the house, which they didn't do. But I thought it was time for that. But instead, Vrabel, a coach who's got a winning record, former coach of the year, he's not good enough. But these guys that have never won anything and constantly make Andre Dillard move after Andre Dillard move, and now they're saying, well, Jamal Adams didn't practice enough, so it didn't work. And the guy they traded away because they signed Jamal Adams has 2 interceptions for the Chargers and is a starter, even though he never looked that good with the Titans, and we're supposed to say that's okay. And that goes back to what Snoop Dogg said in 2017. Think about this. This is you. And this was, again, in reference to Shannon Sharpe standing up for Brian Billick and talking about how the NFL won't give him a second opportunity, even though he was a Super Bowl coach. And listen to what Snoop Dogg had to say. And I am telling you, this is the Titans to a T.
Brian Billick, from 1999 to 2007, won 2 AFC North titles, won Super Bowl 35, and had 0 back-to-back losing seasons. He can't get a job. He can't even get an interview.
Oh, you talking about the coach that's on CBS to be doing this?
No. Brian Billick, the one that's on NFL Network.
Yeah, but he used to coach.
Yeah, he was coaching Baltimore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a great coach.
He can't get a job. He can't even get an interview.
Probably because he know how to win. They like coaches that like to lose. Like I'm watching the NFL industry. They don't really respect coaches that win. When you lose, they like, for example, Marvin Lewis. Hate to say it, you've been having a horrible season since you've been there. He should have been gone. But they keep reinstating him, giving him opportunities. And it's like, why did he keep getting opportunity and Billick's not getting opportunity?
Yeah. They like coaches who like to lose. Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that. Mike Mularkey, not good enough. 2 years, sorry, you got to go. Every move they make ends up being a bad move. L'Jarius Sneed can't cover Alec Pierce anymore. What happened? And by the way, somebody in the YouTube chat said Jared repeatedly said Molden sucked, but now it's a problem that he was traded. I did not like Molden. I did not like Molden, but I did not like when they traded Molden. I did not like the idea of Molden starting for the Titans. But then when they added Quandre Diggs, I said, okay, this is good because Molden is kind of that hybrid backup. If you need him to play corner, you can play him at corner so that Trey Avery doesn't have to play corner. If you need him at safety, you can play him at safety. I'm fine with that. And when they trade him for a bag of footballs, you don't got to do that. But again, they know best. They always seem to know. They always seem to have all the answers, and then they never win any games. I don't understand how this works. Speaking of not winning games, the Predators need to start winning games. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we're moving things around. I thought Novi and Vange had their best game 2 nights ago. And I think with their hockey IQs and their offensive abilities, it could be a really good fit for Stammer. And maybe you move Marchie over, just kind of moving around a little bit. And we talked about it's be a work in progress. I don't know how it's going to fit, where it's going to fit, but we're trying different things.
That was Andrew Burnett. So I saw the line combinations this morning at Morning Skate, Ian, and it sounds like the Predators are going back to Tommy Novak centering the second line.
That's correct.
So they they signed Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, and they said Tommy Novak can get the first crack at centering that second line. Midway through the first game, Andrew Burnett didn't like what he saw. He moves Colton Sissons up there. Then he starts moving them all around the last couple of games, and now they've decided they tried Cole Smith up there. They decided we're going to try back. We're going to put Tommy Novak back up there in the top 6. So all of that to me, that's fine. That's it's early in the season. You're trying to figure out what your best line combinations are. You're trying to figure out if you need somebody on the trade market. You're trying to figure that whatever. Here's what's not okay. The fact that they're 0-3, and I almost feel like guaranteeing an Edmonton win tonight, just because maybe that'll give the Predators some good juju, and that'll give us some hope that they could win the game. Because other than that, I have no hope that the Predators are going to win a game at home against the Edmonton Oilers. Zero. Literally zero hope. I will be at the game tonight, by the way, but I have zero hope. But they need to start winning. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This is supposed to be a competitive team. And I don't mean competitive in regular season games. I mean competing for the cup. That's what this team is supposed to be. That's what they spent the money to be, is to be a cup contending team. They knew it when they spent the money. So when it comes to the Predators, and it comes to the fact that they put Wedgwood out there in game 1 because Saros was hurt, and he got daddied in that second period by the Dallas Stars, and they couldn't come back, that's a problem. That in and of itself is not the end of the world. What is a problem is that, again, through 3 games, they don't have a win, and they're probably not going to win tonight because they're playing Edmonton, who they never beat at home. By the way, the Bruins come to town on Tuesday. The Bruins are really and then with each game they lose, it becomes more and more of a thing. If they were 1-2 instead of 0-3, wouldn't probably even cross the radar. But they are 0-3. And I know it takes time to gel, and that's fine. But the reality with what this team needs to be is this team needs to be firmly in the playoffs at U.S. Thanksgiving, which is in a month and a half. They need to be firmly in the playoffs, and they need to be firmly in the playoffs for most of the season because this is an older group, so they don't need to be playing catch-up. And if you want to talk about what they have to do in order to win tonight, or what they have to do in order to, find sustained success, especially in the offensive end, or be able to control the defensive end, that's one thing. But I don't care about any of that. My thing is figure it out and win some games along the way, and then you can get back into tinkering with the lines and trying to figure out what the right D pairs are, and do you have to go get a second line center, which I think they're going to have to do this year, and that kind of stuff. But you cannot have a panic in October. I don't ever want to poo-poo games because, again, they're on our station and I watch them, and I'm going again tonight. And so I don't want to poo-poo games. But October, November hockey is not the same as January, February hockey. And it's certainly not the same as March or April hockey when you start to get real close to the playoffs. I kind of look at it like, hey, just get through these games and be in a position to compete, and then find yourself on the other side of it, when you get into that start of the year and now it's time to get ready to go. But you can't do that if you start the year 0-10. So tonight's a big one. And they have got to win. Because if they don't win now, it's 0-4. It's 0-4. They play Detroit on Saturday. It's, oh my God, what are they going to do against Detroit? And then all of a sudden, you're 0-5. They come the Bruins, and then it goes the road. You see what I'm saying? Again, I think these things are all going to even out. I think the Predators are probably going to lose tonight because it's Edmonton. But then they'll win on Saturday, and then they'll win on Tuesday, and then they'll be 2-5, and then it'll be fine. They'll figure it out. But where we sit right now, I would say it is concerning because there's a lot of pressure on this team. There's a lot of pressure, and there should be. And so, again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, this has to happen or this doesn't, but they need to get themselves out of this. Boy, a win tonight would be so nice. A win tonight would be so relaxing. That's, I think, the right word to use. A win tonight for the Predators would be so relaxing because what it would mean is, hey, they're not going to be 0-5. They're not going to be 0-6. They're not going to be, and then you can get back to that whole trying to gel and figuring out what your line combination should be and figuring out, who should play where and whatnot. By the way, I do think it is inevitable. And I heard Elliot Friedman talking about this on the midday show today because they asked him, we talked to Barry Trotz and we keep saying, so what's the deal with this Johansson money? Because the Predators have a boatload of draft picks. They just don't have a lot of cap space. And so if the Predators were to get an extra $4 million in cap space because of the Johansson grievance, then that would be very beneficial come January, February, when they're looking to acquire that second line center. They've got all those second round draft choices that they could dangle in front of somebody in order to get a player. They've got 3 first round draft choices this year to dangle for a player or something like that. So they could make that move given the cap situation. And Elliott said that I guess there are expedited grievances in the league, and there is not an expedited grievance being held for Johansson. So that's probably going to take some time. And so for me, again, I think they need to win. Ian, talk for a second because I've got to handle this little tiny thing right here so we can get TD into the arena on time.
Good deal. Yeah, I mean, as far as tonight goes, for the Preds and Oilers, it will be interesting to see, Draisaitl is technically usually a Preds killer. So we'll have to see. And I actually think they should consider breaking up the Stamkos-Marchessault pairing. Every game so far, they've kept Stamkos and Marchessault on the same line. I think that's not a bad idea. You don't necessarily want 2 new players on the same line trying to figure out the system together. It almost seems like it would be better off if you have 2 players on the same line that are familiar with how Brunette wants to play, and then you kind of sprinkle in 1 or 2 of the new guys to help supplement. I kind of think Evangelista, Novak, Stamkos is a good start, personally.
So,
and I would have considered if you wanted to move Stamkos to center like they did last game,
which I don't like, by the way.
If you're going to do that and move Cole Smith up there, just move Evangelista up there with them. Evangelista with Stamkos and Marchessault, I would be okay with that. But I also think you should probably break up Stamkos and Marchessault at first, see if they can get familiar and just get a feel for roles on the team. There's a lot of deferring, who's going to take the shot, who's going to pass. There's still a lot of figuring that stuff kind of out with Stamkos and who wants to be the shooter, who wants to be the passer. In Tampa, they had that figured out pretty good with the Kucherov-Stamkos situation. And that's just going to be a work in progress for now.
Ian, well done with that great analysis.
Sure, no problem.
One texter says, I have more faith in the Titans winning more than 3 games for the rest of the year than I do in the Predators being Edmonton. I agree. It's not looking good, but it is reality. Okay, TD is going to join us next here on the program, 615-737-1025. And I will have to go put out a small little fire here. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. TD is with us for the TD Power Hour, fresh from the locker room. TD, good to see you. How are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing really well, man. Good to be seen.
And fresh from the NLCS.
Yeah, quite an experience, man. I love my Mets, but I definitely, I was disgusted. But, hey, it was a blessing to be able to go. That's for sure.
So my thing is like my brain doesn't work after the show. And so I saw on Twitter, the picture that you posted of Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry.
Yeah.
And I almost sent it to you to say, hey, look, Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry are out there. And then I realized it was you that posted
they were right in front of me, man. It was cool. I like to have the opportunity to be a sports fan, and I've been a fan of the Mets since 1983. Darryl Strawberry is the first athlete I ever liked and fell in love with, and still to this day, that's my guy. So it was cool being able to go there, kind of navigate through the crowd, be like, Darryl, and he would say, what's up? And it was cool, man. I loved the experience.
Okay, TD, I am a sports fan. I am a Titan fan, and I am out.
You're out?
I'm out. Sunday's game, I said on Friday, I said, if they lose to this Indy team, given the circumstances, given the fact that Jonathan Taylor's out, DeForest Buckner's out, Juju Brents is out, if they lose to this Indy team, then we're going to have some hard questions around here. And it's at the very top, starting with owner on down. Because I know the quarterback's not good. But to me, it's even deeper than that. And I've got no faith that the people running the Titans know what they're doing. I'm worried about Brian Callahan. When I heard that they had a bad day at practice yesterday, which Will Levis volunteered out there, I'm at Wednesday, you're 1-4, and on Wednesday you have a bad day at practice. You got embarrassed on Sunday. I'm worried about them losing the team. I'm worried about all of it.
Yeah.
And
look, I think everything should be in play. I'm not really one to say, okay, ownership, there's an issue there. I don't think there's an issue with Chad Brinker, Rand Carthon, Anthony Robinson. I don't think there's an issue with Brian Callahan either. I think, because if you look at it, okay, let's go through the different problems, all right? Oh, the big problem after the game was, hey, Calvin Ridley needs to get the ball early, okay? All right, that's cool. So what do I do? Hey, Nick Host, you talk to us about Ridley needing the ball early. You saw the frustration that Ridley had. What's the problem? He pointed to the second play of the game. Well, okay, yeah, it was cool. And this is the thing. This is the thing that's interesting. So many people were like, oh, Callahan's a terrible play caller because he's calling screens. Well, guess what? On the backside of the screen, you had Calvin Ridley coming open. You see all that in the concourse right there? That's about how wide open the area was for him to catch the ball and run, right? It's not Ridley's fault he didn't get the ball. It's not the offensive line's fault that Ridley didn't get the ball. It's not Holtz's fault that he didn't get the ball. It's not Callahan's fault that he didn't get the ball. You know whose fault it was? In that instance, it was Levis. And this is my thing here. Because, Will Levis, I'll advocate for him. There's a lot to like about him. But the problem is there's too much going on in his head. And you know how you know that? Because you look at the quote that he had after the game where he talked about, he wants to go and make the plays down the field. But he's like, okay, if I bypass read 1 and 2 and get sacked, then, well, wait a minute. I can't throw down the field. I got to take read 1 and 2. And it's just like, okay, what's going on? There's a lot going on in his mind. So you can't be like, boom, boom, boom. That would be like me asking you a question and you not being able to answer it because you're like, okay, well, if I say this, the Predators are going to get mad. But if I say that, the fans are going to get mad. Who do I get upset? And that's basically what he has going on.
So I hear that, but then why wasn't he this bad last year?
Well, I think because things were a lot more simplified. Think about it. Most of his big plays came off of what?
Play action.
Boom. You know what play action does? Like you ask any quarterback, play action gives you wide open windows to throw to, and typically it's an easy 1-2 read.
Okay, so stop it right there because this is, again, where I'm going into my whole questioning of the entire operation. The play calling and the offensive system. Like, people are mad about individual play calls. I'm not sure I really care about that. But the development of the quarterback, the what are they asking him to do? The what is he able to – that I do wonder if they've got a good grip on that. Last year, you say it's simpler than it is this year. And last year, they had play action. Well, last year, they also had Derrick Henry. And we talked at length about like, I think you gotta keep Derrick Henry around here because Derrick Henry commands the attention that makes it easier for a young quarterback. They didn't keep Derrick Henry around here. And so it's like, well, that seemed to be a mistake. I do feel like they thought Levis was, I think the Levis that they see in the meeting room is not the Levis who plays on the football field. So they thought Levis could process more than he actually could, because when he's talking to them, he probably repeats it back, and they're like, it seems like he's got it.
Like he makes a mistake, and they always say, that's exactly what your explanation is right. Derrick, look, Henry, that was a mutual, both parties knew it was, okay, it's
he's the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're never gonna.
He is running like the king right now.
Well, I mean, it's also good when you're not getting touched for 3.2 yards after you touch the football.
But then that
as
goes
opposed
back
to 2 yards before you do. The Ravens have a better offensive line.
I know, but that goes back again to the whole operation where they drafted Roger Rosengarten to play right tackle. He was a guy you liked a lot.
Thank you.
They drafted him at 62 to play right tackle. So they have a right tackle. They let John Simpson walk in free agency, and Morgan Moses they traded, and they had the plan of, hey, Daniel Falele, another guy that you liked, who they had drafted in the middle rounds, was ready to step in as a starter, and they're bringing Rosengarten along at right tackle.
Andrew Voorhees, the guy who I really liked till he blew his arm out benching at the combine. That's another one.
And I'm just like, that's my
Or
whole
ACL.
That's my whole thing, which is like, yeah, it was great that the Titans went out and got, Tony Pollard's been pretty good, but it's great that the Titans have gone out and gotten big names that people got excited about, but they're dealing with issues that they didn't get the right tackle.
Well,
they're still dealing with issues about things
I don't think last week it was a right tackle issue, right? And I think really this is what it boils down to. And I mean, I used to say this about receivers like 5 years ago, when you had the Amari Coopers coming into the league, when you had Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks, Kelvin Benjamin, even for that year, he had 1,000 yards. It was like, okay, yeah, you know what? You don't have to wait for a receiver to develop. They're coming in the league. They have an impact. Boom, it's done. It doesn't always work that way. And it's just the same like for the quarterback position. And sometimes, especially when you're putting in a new scheme, like this offense is different. Like Will Levis is being asked to do things that are different from what he's been asked to do before, right? And then you also have to look into Nick Holtz made a great point about how the Colts were. They said, listen, you're not beating us deep.
Well, that's their game.
Exactly. You can have it underneath stuff. You're not beating us deep. Across the league, that has more or less been the case with this too high safety. So now the adjustment to guys like Levis has been made. Now guys like Levis have to make the adjustment to the adjustment. And that's what's going on right now. That process of him getting that adjustment and getting that development that you want, that the fans want, that the team wants, is not happening at a pace that's fast enough. That's the big problem.
I'm worried that it's not happening at all.
It's not happening enough. Now, it's a darn shame that you got to be like, okay, well, you know what? This guy had the mindset, okay, let me protect myself and slide. Okay, it's cool. This guy had the mindset.
He did slide on Sunday.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, he's not drifting into sacks as much. He's moving around in the pocket, but he's not drifting into sacks as much. Those are the small victories. Like, I would hate to be Brian Callahan right now because his hands are somewhat tied and that he wants to win now. He wants all of that to happen, but the development of what he's brought in to do, right? This is the Q rule, right? The guy who is the QB whisperer, he was brought in to do that. That development is not happening at the process that everybody wants it to.
TD is with us. We'll get into Levis next specifically, and if Levis is a lost cause or not. We'll do that with TD next here on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. In fact, I've had Hiller out to my home 3 times this month. Now, I don't love the fact that I've had to have Hiller out to my home 3 times this month, but I do love the fact that when Hiller comes in, they get it done. And they have done just that. It's spooky season, and everyone's thinking about Halloween. And this month, it's all treats and no tricks with my friends at Hiller. During their Spooky Good Fall giveaway, get a free Blackstone griddle, Solo stove, or Yeti Tundra cooler with select home upgrades, or enjoy a $99 special like an HVAC tune-up. Visit happyhiller.com today for all the details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Fish Truck today.
When we talked to Callahan about the urgency, he said, it's always there, but there might be a different tone to it given the record and these next 2 tough road opponents. What's your take on the urgency going into a week like this?
Yeah, I think operationally, just in and out of the huddle too. That's something we saw on this past Sunday that wasn't up to our standard. And with all the stuff that we do, with all the motions and everything, and different types of looks we're going to give to the defense, like we need to, get up and set on the line of scrimmage with more than 15 seconds to go. We can't be breaking the huddle, approaching the line with 6-7 seconds without even having to or being able to operate what we want to for the play. So it's working through this week of getting the substitutions game-like, making sure that we're getting in and out of the huddle with urgency. And I think that mindset in the huddle, in and out of the huddle, should take its course throughout everything else that we're doing in the building and how we approach it. So we didn't have the best day of practice today. We all knew that. We want to come out tomorrow and make sure that urgency and what we put out there on tape is more to our standards. So opportunity to do that tomorrow.
That was Will Levis when asked about the sense of urgency given the Bills game. Starts talking about, we got to get in and out of the huddle faster. We got to get the plays in faster. We got to get up to the line of scrimmage faster. And by the way, we didn't have a good day of practice today, so we need to have a good day of practice tomorrow. TD with us for the TD Power Hour. D-Mace lit him up today for that.
It's tough because it's a catch-22, right? You want these guys to be honest. You want them. How many times did Mike Vrabel say, "Oh, we got to coach better and play better"?
And everybody got mad, yeah.
Right? So it's just finding that balance. And the thing that was crazy is I don't think the question about urgency was in regards to them getting in and out of the huddle.
No, it was Jill Jelnick who asked it, and you know this because it's a little inside baseball, but TV reporters are on for a minute 30 or 2 minutes or whatever it is, coming up in sports. And it's the Titans are getting ready for the Bills. They're 1-4. And Will Levis today on the urgency of the team. Yeah,
Right.
this is a big game for us Sunday because we want to get back in the playoff race.
Yeah.
All right, on to NASCAR today where that's what she's looking for.
And here it was. He started. And the funny thing, right? Last week, I don't know if you remember, but I asked Levis, Callahan, and Nick Holtz about tempo. I'm like, hey, what are your thoughts on getting tempo? No, 2 weeks ago I asked it. What are your thoughts on getting tempo, using tempo to create urgency, right, in the offense, knowing how things have been, and Callahan, he talked about when he was asked about this response to Levis, he said, guys are having a little bit of trouble getting back into the huddle in time. Well, if you run tempo, you don't have to worry about that.
Sure.
But the problem is, and I don't know what the percentages are of motion, but they use a lot of it. Now, by the way, the Bills, they use motion more than anyone else, 80%, and they got a way of getting Khalil Shakur the football in space.
By the way, he's really good.
Yeah, he's really good. Yep. Really good. He's helping my fantasy team too. But that is something that they have to look at doing, that tempo and urgency. They're married. It comes hand in hand. But then for Levis to say that they had a bad practice,
Just volunteer it. And that makes me question the coach, TD, because if you are having a bad day of practice on the Wednesday after you got embarrassed with the season,
there's nothing wrong with having a bad day of practice. In fact, a lot of times, and Callahan has said this, you learn from when bad things happen.
I know, but Callahan says everything bad that happens is a good thing.
No, I think he has a mindset of he looks at opportunities. Like anything, adversity is an opportunity for him. Now, for others, adversity is a chance to shrivel up and hide. Like I told Callahan, sometimes you got to get fresher under pressure. And he cracked up, and I was like, yeah, that's the approach. Some people don't respond to adversity positively. He responds by taking that mindset and doing it that way. I don't think there's anything bad about having a bad practice because you still got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever to get that out. But the problem is Levis's wording probably could have been better. We didn't have the best practice, right?
Levis's wording has been terrible all week. When he was talking about Calvin Ridley yesterday, and he said with Ridley, he said, we're not going to point fingers. I can do better and he can do better, or I need to do better and he needs to do better. And it's
right.
like, dude, you need to just worry about you.
We need to do better. There's ways to table it. And very much
Even
so.
then, just say I.
He could say I. Did you hear Nick Holtz? He said that they as an offense sat down and watched every passing play. That's what they did this week. And he's like, we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. So we all sat down and watched every passing play. And we said, okay, where's this ball supposed to go? Where's that ball supposed to go? And when I asked him about Ridley not getting the touches, he didn't pull any punches. He was like, well, the second play of the game, it was supposed to go here. The cover, we got fooled. We got fooled by the coverage, and it didn't go there. And I'm not saying everything is on the quarterback, but, man, I tell you what, when you have one that is the one, they make that's just like, putting that extra little bit of seasoning on a meal that doesn't taste that good.
As well as I do, Ryan Tannehill's watching this and thinking,
on his boat in Fort Lauderdale with a huge lobster. Like, man, well, how you like me now?
So with that, is Levis a lost cause? Because I think he is. I'm not saying bench him. I mean, if I was the coach, I would bench him because I think some of the things he said over, the last couple of days have been, quite frankly, I mean, honestly, like, I think it's a lot of throwing under the bus, which I don't like.
Uh-huh.
But I do wonder, like, when it comes to Levis, like, I wouldn't bench it, or I don't care if they bench him because I don't care if they. I'm done with the season. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're terrible. I hope they get the number 1 pick. I'm over the season, but I also think like the coach, like, you know, he can't go 2-15. You know, Derek talks all the time. Derek's been talking for a month about losing the locker room if he stays behind the quarterback. And then the quarterback gets up there and says things like, we aren't going to point fingers. We have to do better. He can be better. I can be better. Like, dude, no.
It's tough. It's really tough. The good thing is, I will say, Calvin really is very strong mentally, right? And so I don't think that he's someone that's going to turn or anything like that. Now, you have other guys. Tyler Boyd's strong mentally. Hopkins is, I don't know what the word, Buddhist like.
I think he's unbothered by anything.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when you look at those guys, the problem is they're playing for their next deals, and they're not young second-year players. Then you have other guys, Quandre Diggs. You got guys who are like their next contract is probably going to be their last one. If the team is doing horribly, that's going to hurt their opportunities to get a better contract. And so even outside of those guys, the ones that are they go in there and they work. Like, what the process is. It's hard work to put in all that hard work and have the cake that you're supposed to be able to eat, as a relief, aka the games, have that just crushed and taken away from you. That is a problem. And I think that is something that eventually, if Levis doesn't get on the best chance to win, you're going to have to make a move eventually. But it's just how long will the process be? But I tell you what, if he's not the dude, that guy in Colorado is a perfect match.
Shedeur?
Yes, sir.
I don't want Shedeur. I don't want
you don't want
Dion.
everything.
I want Cam Ward. I'll take Cam Ward.
Listen, here's the thing, and I love Cam Ward. He's probably my favorite quarterback in this. But with Cam Ward, you get a lot of the similarities with Levis.
I did see some of that hero ball kind of stuff.
Look at the Virginia Tech game.
Where he's like trying to get around, and he completes the pass, but it's like, yeah, in the NFL, that's not going to fly.
Shedeur's all boom, 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 boom. In fact, Emory Hunt, football game plan on CBS Sports, he compared Shedeur to Joe Burrow. He said like the coolness and the getting the ball out and all of that on time, on schedule is very similar to Burrow when he was at LSU. So,
do you think Levis is a lost cause?
No, I think there's still he's a project. He's more of a project than I thought he was, but he's a project. I don't think it's lost, and I don't think Callahan and those guys believe it either, and that's why they're exhausting this process.
More with TD, including the coach and how long this can go on before there's some issues. We'll do it next, and we'll get your phones as we always do at the end of the hour. 615-737-1025 on Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
obviously something happened between the time that you know he got here till now that he wasn't pleased about it. I'm sure it was the playing time. I'm sure he was told that he would get some playing time, that he would be in the rotation, not necessarily a starter, but he would be in the rotation. And he didn't find himself in the rotation for whatever reason. For what reason, I have no idea. Was it because of injury? He wasn't playing, early on, or he didn't practice, during two-a-days much. But they understood that when they brought him in. They knew what his practice regimen or his practice habits would be, just like they knew what D-Hop practice regimen and his practice habits would be. Again, there must have been some miscommunication between he and the Titans brass, or he and the head coach, or he and the defensive coordinator.
That was D. Mace today talking about the Titans' release of Jamal Adams, which I'm not sure, TD, I was really surprised by, given the fact that they asked Brian Callahan about it yesterday, and Brian Callahan, who, unlike the last coach, does say stuff, was like, we're working through something, and I'll leave it at that. And I was like, yeah, that does not bode well. You talked last week about talking to Jamal Adams, and then he ends up getting put on the non-football injury list, and now he's been released. And you had reporting today that the Titans, that his practicing was an issue, and then he says he's fully healthy. So where are we on the Jamal Adams situation?
Yeah, so when I say the practicing was an issue, that was the reason why he wasn't playing, because they felt like they couldn't rely on him. And I mean, look, Jeffrey Simmons, L'Jarius Sneed, DeAndre Hopkins, these are guys who are extended that olive branch of, okay, if you miss a day or two through the week, it's not going to automatically cost you the ability to be active on game day. Well, here's the thing. There were full weeks where Adams didn't practice.
Well, did he go to the team and say, I can't practice today? Or did the team say, hey, you're going to take the day off?
That's where the mystery lies. Now, in talking to Adams, he said that he wanted to practice and was good to go. He told me that he did a lot of extra things to make sure that his body was right so that he could go. I just have never heard of a team keeping a guy from practicing because they feel that he's healthy, but they don't want him to practice. So there's a little bit there. He also told me that, he was shocked by how things went because he was like, yo, T, Denard drafted me. Like, he's the reason why I came here.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, and I don't know if you heard Wilson today. He was just like, things just didn't work out, and I'll just leave it at that. But he wasn't concerned about starting. He was like, he told me he knew like Hooker was going to start. Hooker's making X million dollars a year, right? And he knew Diggs was going to, because of the situation. And he's like, I just want to contribute. Like, just give me a chance to get into the flow of the game. It's tough if you're playing 2 snaps. You know what I mean? It's tough to get into you're playing 1 snap, 17 snaps against the Packers. And let's not get it twisted. There were missed tackles in there. And when he said, I just want to contribute, I was like, well, what about the missed tackles?
Tackle the guy,
He's like, well, I mean, yeah, you don't want to have those, but, you got to get into the flow of the game to be able to make plays like that. And I hear what he's saying, but the fact of the matter is, if your opportunities are limited, you got to maximize every one that you get. And really what it boils down to is he felt that he wasn't getting an opportunity here. He felt that, he humbled himself by signing the minimum contract that he did. And he wasn't available in practice enough for them to be able to be like, I could trust you in game.
So, see, this entire situation is why I'm really disappointed in the Titans as a whole. Because I feel like this is one of those situations with the Titans where either they're not telling the truth or they're stupid. And it has to be one or the other because, like, you signed Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams is not going to practice. Jamal Adams.
Full weeks, though?
But he's being held together by Band-Aids. Everybody knew that. He never plays. Jeffrey Simmons got mad at the media for saying, yeah, they signed Jamal Adams today, but he never plays. And then Jeffrey Simmons is like, these guys try to be our friends and they try to, whatever. And so you had to know that. Like, again, like me. Like, when L'Jarius Sneed doesn't practice during the week, I don't get upset about it because I know that that's part of the deal. And if he starts missing games because of the knees, I'll go crazy. But again, it's like that's part of the deal. And so if the Titans are upset that he didn't practice, and he's telling, I think he's telling you the truth when he's like, I told him I could practice, and they said, no, don't. So they're making something up. And this is what the Titans do.
I don't think they were making anything up. I think if you look at Sneed, like,
well, somebody's not telling the truth between Adams and the Titans. If they're telling you we're not happy,
he could feel healthy, because there's a lot of times players are like, yo, I'm good to go. I could go. And the training staff was like, this is what we're getting this feedback back, and it's saying this. Like,
the cancer curing AI model has given us
not even that. Like,
computation here.
I mean, look, I would say this model that you ridicule, or just the things that the measures that they have gone to, like, they could monitor, and a part of how they know a hamstring is a hamstring, a quad is a quad, type of, like, the degree is they can monitor, like, when guys run, like, they can monitor the force and how it's distributed. And you could tell, like, okay, yeah, you know what, he's really favoring this more than what we think, boom, based off of these, so you do have that. I don't think that either party is lying. I just don't think they're on the same page. And one party feels like he's good enough to go and the other one doesn't. And it's just been an issue. But the point for me is there have been weeks, like a full week of practice, where you haven't seen him out there.
Well, he didn't practice at training camp. It was like, when is he getting out of there?
He did.
He like practiced one snap and then spent the rest of the time talking on the sideline.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think, it's one of those things where you take a shot. I hate that it cost them Elijah Molden, because, I'm higher.
That's why I'm about to lose my Kool-Aid
I'm higher on Molden than most. Like, I've been consistent, because I know you've called him Scarbini, and you've said that he's expendable. And,
he's a backup.
You said, hey, you better look at the safety position, even with him on the roster and Adams on the roster. But I think you look at that situation, Molden was going to be gone next year anyway, so it's not a huge loss, right? And then I know some will look at that Mike Brown when Quadre Diggs, when Diggs went down, and like that very next play, Josh Downs had to out and up. That wasn't on Mike Brown.
So I'm not a Molden guy by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like Molden is probably too little to be a good safety, and he's probably not fast enough to be a good corner. So he's kind of a tweener. When they kept saying in the offseason that Molden could be a starter, I'm like, no, he is not a starter. But then when they traded him, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I liked having him, back in the back as a
special teams also.
Well, yeah, and which they could use some help, but especially because I'm like, what I don't want Trey Avery playing. So, like, if Molden has to get in there, then Molden can get in there. If Molden's got to go in at safety, he can get in there. And then I saw this tweet from John Glennon today. When they released Jamal Adams, I didn't care because I knew that Jamal Adams wasn't going to be any good. But he said the Titans signing of Adams was presumably one of the factors that led to Elijah Molden seeking a trade. Molden has played in 5 games for the Chargers, starting 3, 2 interceptions, 22 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery.
Yeah, I remember because he had the 1 interception that
it was Mahomes, right?
Yeah, week 4, when the Titans were playing the Dolphins, he had the interception.
But it's like, what? Like, why are these guys leaving here like Malik Willis for a bag of footballs and then going somewhere else and playing better?
That's something that they have to look at from within.
What is good? What? And that's like, again, not to, like, we all knew Derrick Henry was good.
Aaron Brewer didn't go somewhere and play.
No, he stinks. But, like, and again, Derrick Henry's a different case because we all knew Derrick Henry was good. But I think there was a lot of talk about, he's good, but he's not Derrick Henry anymore. And
Derrick
is
could mess around and have
Henry.
2,000 this year. You know that?
So did you see my tweet the other day? So that 2021 season, and I thought that the beginning of 2021 was the most dominant Derrick was. Like, the end of the 18 season and the playoff run in 19 were certainly as good as you could be. But 2021,
the beginning, those first,
before he broke his foot in Indianapolis, he averaged 117.1 yards a game. He is averaging 117.3 yards a game right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So we're about to play, we're about to see week 7 be played, right?
Yes.
So he had the injury in week
8?
9, week 8.
Might have been 9 because of a bye, but he played 8 games.
Yeah, so 117 a clip. That's 234 to 704. That's 938. Right along the pace
He's
that he was on.
290 yards ahead of number 3 on the rushing list right now. He's the same guy. And that's my problem again is every single guy leaves here except for Aaron Brewer and plays better. Like every single player.
Yeah.
Whether it's Derrick Henry, whether it's the best player, Derrick Henry, or the worst backup, Malik Willis, they all play better. It's like Will Levis is going to leave here and turn into Dan Marino. PT is going to leave here and turn into Trent Williams. What is going on, TD?
It's unexplainable. I think you have the guy who could potentially turn into Trent Williams and J.C. Latham. But no, that's unexplainable. I don't know.
That is the one guy who actually has the ability to be like a great player.
And hey, I did this in the locker room too, but I want to do it on the air. Dylan Radins is playing his behind off. You hear me? I highlighted him on Whiteboard Wednesday last week when he's pulling. And did you see when he pulled and he hit that?
He murdered the guy. No, I think the entire year Radins has been the second best lineman on the team behind Lathan.
Radins, and I told him today, I was like, look, man, like, even I get on you, you know, with how you've played, but raise my hand. You've had a good season so far.
I think Radins, ever since midway through last year, when he came back from the ACL, I think Radins is the best solid player. Because he played solid right tackle, wasn't great, had some penalties, but he was it's the best right tackling we've seen from the Titans over the last 3 years. And then I think he's been, again, the second best lineman this year. That's why we've got a little segment coming up where I'm going over what I think the trade values of the guys they could trade.
Don't trade him. No.
But I do think that he has value as a guy that can come in and play on the offensive line.
Yeah, you typically don't see an O-line trade because, again, that's a position.
How many teams in the league right now could use an extra guy, a sixth guy that can play guard and tackle?
I think the Titans are one of them.
Yeah, but the Titans, there's nothing to play for this year.
Why create a need? He's a young player.
Well, I think the season's over, so I don't care.
Okay, but beyond, why create a need?
Well, his contract's up.
You sign him. I mean,
but you can say, hey, like, we're going to want to re-sign you, but we're going to send you off to Kansas City, and then hopefully we re-sign you in free agency. You know what Bill Polian says? Once these guys get to free agency, you got to consider them.
Anything goes.
All right, your phones for TD are next. 1025 the game. TD Power Hour here on the program. Tough one to go all the way to New York for to watch them lose the way they did yesterday. I felt bad for you.
Man, listen.
It's a long series.
I sat there in my seat after the game, and I just was looking at the field like, it was this bad. They had to say, all right, man, come on. It's time to go. We got to get out of here.
So I actually told Vingan today, I was like, hey, be tighter on things. Don't, tell random. But I will say this. A couple years ago, Braves were in the World Series. My dad and my best friend's dad, we all went to a Dave & Buster's in Marietta. There was nobody there, so they put the Titans and the Colts up on the big screen. It was the overtime game. Titans win that game, basically guarantee the division. Braves are up 3-1 in the World Series. We're going back to the hotel, and I thought, what have the sports gods done to me to allow me to have this right now? And the Braves lose that night, and the next day, driving in the car, we're listening to Robbie and Rex Road on the stream.
Derrick Henry has.
And I was like, ah! So that will happen to you. Adam in Portland is up here on the program. Adam, you're on with TD. Go ahead.
Hey, TD, man. Here's my thing, man. I see Levis, and I keep thinking the same thing. If he had Kevin Mawai or Bruce Matthews or Eddie or Blaine or some type of adult around him, who knows, man? Like, can you think, and I think about all the leadership, because we have no leadership. Like, I don't mind Calvin Ridley coming out and speaking out, because it's like he's the only person who's like, I'm sick of this. Like, he's an adult, man. That's what you're supposed to do. But, like, does Levis remind you of anybody? I'm trying to think through history if there's ever been another Levis. I truly think he is one of a kind. Like, somebody who come out and had such an incredible debut and has physical traits and is so incredibly reckless. I've never seen it. And it's to the extent where I'm like, if you compare him to Brett Favre, you're a complete idiot. Like, he's not even close to Brett Favre. But I've never seen anybody so incredibly reckless get so many chances.
Adam, thank you.
Well,
I go back to
Brett
that
Favre
Colts game.
was very reckless.
Well, I go back to that Colts game in 2021 that I was just talking about, the one where Derrick Henry broke his foot. Carson Wentz gave you the game.
Yeah, Carson Wentz. Josh Freeman is a guy that comes to mind. I remember that first year, he was like, everybody was like, oh, he's good.
I'm going to write down on my notes. I got a Josh Freeman story I got to take off the air.
Okay. Yeah, so, I get what Adam's saying. And, look, I think there are some leaders in there. Are they leading as much in the media as they are in the room? Probably not. But I think they do have leadership there.
I think they miss Derrick Henry, though, in that regard in leadership.
Yeah.
The carry the big stick, but doesn't do a lot of chirping, but he leads by example.
When he talks,
yes.
It's like, oh.
And I think they're missing that. And I think they thought, in Kevin Byard's leadership of kind of always being the guy that the team turned to when things weren't good. Here comes Byard up here to speak for the team. And I think they're missing some of that. One texter says, TD, I keep hearing about the things Levis can't do and where he struggles, but please give me some hope. What exactly does he excel at?
Oh, well, he excels in being able to make throws that there's probably like 5 guys on earth that could do.
But he's not doing them this year.
No, but again, it goes back to what we talked about, the way defenses are playing them, the way things are happening as far as the protection. Like there's last year he was just like, you know what? F it. And it's going. This year you don't have that same reckless abandonment that you had. So that is something that he does. He throws very well on play action. He does an excellent job of, turning his back to the defense and then flipping the shoulders back around and finding where to go and throwing it that way. I think he is a guy that can extend plays and make things happen that way too. The cupboard's not bare with him. It's just right now the ingredients that are coming together. They're not making a good product.
One texter says, TD, wouldn't it be better to build confidence in the coach and have momentum going into next season by playing Mason Rudolph, who's won 61% of his games, than losing 15 games and having no confidence in the coach?
Yeah, I don't think playing Mason Rudolph gives the coach confidence. I think, honestly, the way things are going right now, like if I'm Callahan, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, hey, listen, like, I got a dude that just he's not a match, but we're still productive somewhat on offense and that we can stay in games, and I'm like, man, if I get that guy, wait to see what happens then. So I don't think Rudolph not being out there has anything to do with his confidence at all.
Yeah, but what do you make of D-May saying that, like, hey, if he keeps defending Will Levis, eventually he's going to lose the team?
Right.
And D-May said about the Ridley thing, I just thought this was pretty interesting. He said that he thinks the wide receiver coach is trying to hold that room together and that he can only hold it together for so long.
Yeah.
He says you're not going to hear Burks or NWI say anything, but between Ridley and Hopkins and Boyd, those guys are airing it out with the receiver coach, and the receiver coach is trying to hold it back. And if they keep losing, eventually it's going to crack.
I don't think Hopkins is airing anything out. Like, he has that Phil Jackson zen. You know what I mean? I don't.
Nothing bothers him.
Yeah, nothing. So
Ridley would be the guy that would crack.
Right. And I think Boyd is just at a point where he's not going to make noise either. Like, if you ask him, he's going to let you know what it is, but I don't think he's just going to outright come and say, hey, look, this is the problem.
Caleb says, TD, why do you think the biggest reason is as to why the Titans defense is bad at getting off the field on third down?
Pass rush.
TD, I think this defense secretly stinks.
I don't think they stink. Like, they're really good. But the crazy thing is they're really good without a pass rush. Like, if they can manage to get a pass rush, like, they could be lights out.
This is the worst number one defense I have ever seen in my life, which is saying something. But I actually think they're bad. Like, I think they're getting exposed the next 2 weeks. And I'll tell you why. They don't turn the ball over. They don't get sacks. And they've been playing backup quarterbacks. No. And you're going to, this is a big boy quarterback this week.
Yeah, I will say this, though, because I know a lot of it made about Jeffrey Simmons not putting numbers up. Well, he don't get credit for the interception, but it's Jeffrey Simmons' fault. He jacked the guard back into Flacco's face, and Flacco couldn't step into the ball, and Hooker picked it off. That's an example of what he's saying about, hey, look, it's more about impacting the quarterback. Because, yeah, a sack would have been good in that situation, but getting the pick off, that was better. It gave them the short field. They were able to score a touchdown.
So I don't disagree with any of that. The thing is those kind of plays are few and far between.
Yeah, you got to have those more consistently. Yeah,
and I need Tavondre Sweat to start getting to the quarterback.
Or impact them at the very least.
Right, where it's like, oh, he took up 3 guys, and Landry hit the quarterback because nobody worried about Landry.
Yeah.
A bunch of people in the text line are disappointed with your Shedeur Sanders take. One guy says, no way Shedeur Sanders needs to come to the Titans. He's got 9 rushes for minus 50 yards. But college is different. Don't they count that in college where they take it away as a rushing play if you get sacked?
Yeah. And you're not drafting it. I didn't know Shedeur Sanders played running back. Like,
here's what I don't know about Shedeur Sanders. If you put good players around Shedeur, would that elevate Shedeur? Like, if Shedeur Sanders and Carson Beck switch spots, and so Shedeur Sanders has those players.
Georgia would be, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback. You look at the way he throws under pressure. You look at his accuracy. You look at his rhythm. He is a good quarterback. What I think we have to do is take away the Sanders part of it and stop faulting this young man.
I am worried about
because of his dad. No, but I'm saying don't allow that. Look at what he does. Don't tell me he's a bad quarterback because of his dad. You know what I mean? And that's the problem. Too many people allow the negativity, their dislike for Deion Sanders being a man that could talk the talk and back it up. They allow that to make them dislike Shedeur Sanders. They're two different people. Shedeur Sanders is a good prospect. Watch his games. I mean, you look at what he's out there working without an offensive line and still completing passes and still hitting guys on time. You look at the late throws that he's making for wins. He is a good quarterback, period.
If you had the number 1 pick, you're the Titans, and Levis ain't the guy, and you've got the number 1 pick, Shedeur or Travis Hunter?
Oh, I'm going Shedeur.
Really?
Frankly, I'm trying to trade down to 3 or 4 and take Shedeur and take the extra benefits of it. But I'm going, yes, because, I mean, a receiver could be really good, but if you don't got a guy that could get him the football, you know what I'm saying?
I think Shedeur is going to be a Raider. I think it's just meant to be.
I can see it.
He was born to be a Raider.
You know what he said, right? They asked him, he was on a show, and they said, what receiver would you want to throw the football to?
And he said DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I didn't like about that, though? Deion was sitting right there with them and was like kind of co-answering.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to see Shedeur without Deion and what that, because you're not bringing Deion with you.
Well, hey, listen, Deion has a job to do at Colorado.
As I say, there's 9 million reasons or whatever why Deion's not coming with you. But then I worry if things don't go well. Like if Shedeur was having the year that Will Levis was having right now, I worry that Dion would be holding court about how it's not Shedeur's fault during his Colorado press conference.
Yeah, you could hold court and you could talk on that, but guess what? That's in Denver. That's not here.
I know, but word travels fast. I've learned that on the radio. Bad news travels fast.
It does, but there's a thing where you hold somebody accountable for their actions, not somebody else's.
TD, as always, great stuff. You are the man.
Appreciate it.
I have my list of if the Titans are going to sell at the trade deadline, which I am in favor of, who could be on the list and what you could actually expect in return in the order of value. We'll do it next. Live from Bridgestone Arena, Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Bridgestone Arena, Preds and Edmonton Oilers tonight, right here, 7 o'clock on 1025 The Game. So, I am a believer. Ian, are you familiar with the Everything Must Go liquidation sale?
Sure, I've heard of them.
I am in favor of the Tennessee Titans posting up signs that say, going out of business, everything must go, sell, sell, sell. I actually have
Everything?
a friend. Everything. Well, I'll explain this in a second. I have a friend that works in retail, as like a, higher up in retail. And he told me that when you see a business that has like an everything must go sale, what they do is apparently they outsource to another company who comes in and does all the marketing and puts up all the signs and brings in their own salespeople and they mark it down to whatever. And then that company gets a cut of whatever the money ends up being one way or another, which is kind of odd, right?
I guess so.
But apparently that's how they do it. Well, I am in favor of an everything must go sale, and I'm going to tell you why. Because if I thought the quarterback was worth saving, then I would say, well, you got to protect him and you got to give him options and got to give him, I'm out on the quarterback. If he proves me wrong, I'll admit it, but I'm out. So everyone wants to know, we need to sell. Well, okay. I'm going to tell you what I think you can get, and I'm going to tell you who I think you can sell. And we'll start at the very, very top of the list with the most tradable Tennessee Titans assets.
Number 1.
DeAndre Hopkins. And I think that's pretty obvious that DeAndre Hopkins is the most likely trade asset. He would be the most valued trade asset somewhere. Charles Robinson today said Pittsburgh is dying to trade for a receiver. And we know Kansas City needs a receiver. And so I think if you ate the money, so you'd have to restructure Hopkins' deal, give it to him in a signing bonus, and then trade him. If you ate the money, I think you could get a 4th-round pick. I was a little surprised by a 3rd-round pick from Marcher, everybody all the time. They had already done that with Amari Cooper, so there wasn't a lot of money left for Buffalo to take on for Amari Cooper. So they give up a 3rd for Cooper. If you eat the money on Hopkins, I think you can probably look at a 4th in 2025 as a potential return. Maybe a 5th you'd have to take, but you're not going to get a 3rd, I would assume, for DeAndre Hopkins, even if you ate the money. But he's the most tradable asset.
Number 2.
Nick Folk, the kicker. This is one that there are a handful of teams that are on the carousel. And again, if you were contending at all, I would say, hey, you got to hang on to Nick Folk because he is taking you off the carousel. But you're not. And he's a free agent at the end of the year. And he's about 87 years old. He's like Gary Anderson. He's got that one little bar on the face mask at this point. It's grandfathered in. I think there's a team out there that would be so desperate at kicking. And I circle Green Bay as kind of the team that I'm like, man, they are desperate for kicking. And they lost a playoff game last year because they couldn't kick. And so would Green Bay say, you know what? Let's give him a 5th. Let's get Nick Folk. Let's get off the carousel. Let's stop trying out with Narvison and Carlson and all these other guys they've tried. Let's just get Nick Folk and do it. I'm going to set the asking price or the expectation price at a 5th-round pick in 2025 for Nick Folk.
Number 3.
Quandre Diggs. Now I'm going to set his price at a 5th-round pick as well. Again, safety's not that valuable of a position, and Quandre Diggs isn't one of the better safeties in the league, but he is a starting safety. He's a solid player. And again, if you're a contender and you need a safety, Quandre Diggs is your guy. He plays. He doesn't get hurt very often. He's been on good teams. He's got a ton of experience. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's not signed after this year. Quandre Diggs would be a guy that I think that you would absolutely circle and say, hey, this is a guy we can add.
Number 4.
Dylan Radins. And I think Dylan Radins is worth a 6th-round pick. And I will say, Dylan Radins has been the 2nd best offensive lineman. If I had any hope for this young quarterback, which I do not, if I had any hope for the young quarterback, I would say you cannot trade your starting right guard. Can't do it. Because you need to protect your young quarterback, even if it means you're not going to win games. Like, I'm not mad at the Titans for not trading Derrick Henry last year, because I think the young quarterback needed Derrick Henry. In fact, I think the young quarterback needs Derrick Henry on the team right now. But I have made up my mind on the young quarterback. I think Radunz would have a lot of value. Again, a 6th-round pick in 2025, but for trade purposes, that's value. I think teams would want Radunz because they would look at it and say, well, we need a guard. Well, he can play guard. We need a guy who can be a 6th offensive lineman that can play guard and tackle. Or we've got a tackle that's out for 6 weeks that's going to be coming back, but instead we got a guy, Radunz can be that guy. His contract expires at the end of the year. He's on a rookie deal. In fact, I would circle the Jets as a potential spot for Dylan Radunz. But I would say 6th-round draft choice in 2025 as a potential trade partner for Dylan Radunz.
Number 5.
Sebastian Joseph Day. I actually really like Sebastian Joseph Day. I think he's come in. He's making $4 million this year. I think he's done a solid job as a rotational defensive tackle. I think you're looking at a 6th-round pick in this year's draft or a 7th-round pick if you were to move him. You know, again, Malik went for a 7th-round pick in this year's draft. So Sebastian Joseph Day, again, I could kind of say 7th-rounder on him, 6th-rounder on him. I think somebody, again, defensive line depth. There's an injury somewhere. San Francisco, for instance. They've got a history with Sebastian Joseph Day. They lost a guy for the entire, I think they lost Javon Hargrave for the entire year. They don't have some of the depth they've had in the past. A guy like Javon Kinlaw's with the Jets now. I would circle Sebastian Joseph Day. And again, 6th or 7th round pick in the 2025 draft.
Number 6.
Tyler Boyd. Again, I don't know how many teams are looking for a slot-only receiver, which is what Tyler Boyd is for the most part. And he's only played in Cincinnati and I guess now here. So it's not like we know, oh, this coach he'd be a fit with, or that coach he'd be a fit with, or this one, because Jay Gruden's out of the league and Zach Taylor in Cincinnati didn't want him, and Brian Callahan in Tennessee, they have him. But Tyler Boyd is a reliable pass catcher. And so, again, 1 year, $4 million, not making a lot of money. Don't know what the bonus was. If you paid him a lot up front, that means there's probably nothing left to pay. In fact, I wouldn't rule out Kansas City. If they strike out on some of these other receivers, I would not rule them out as a place for Tyler Boyd to go play the slot, knowing that they've got an outside guy like Xavier Worthy. Now, they signed Juju Smith-Schuster, so he'll probably play that role. But I would not rule out Tyler Boyd. I'd put him on the list, and I think you can get a 7th-round draft pick if you were to trade Tyler Boyd. Again, you're not shattering the earth here with what you're acquiring, but if you want something, again, and everything must go sale is not a we're going to try to make the most money. It's a we're going to try to make some money. And so I'd say a 7th-round pick for Tyler Boyd.
Number 7.
Daniel Brunskill. You know, Daniel Brunskill doesn't play here, but he's got offensive line versatility. I think you're looking at a 7th-round pick in next year's draft if you were to try to trade Daniel Brunskill. And even then, he's making $3.5 million this year. I think the money might be a little prohibitive, but offensive linemen, especially veteran offensive linemen, they've kind of become like corners in a sense that you can never have enough. Now, he can't play here, so it'd have to be a place that knows him, like San Francisco, maybe Cleveland, although it looks like they're selling, so I don't know why they would do that. But I would put Daniel Brunskill on the trade block. And again, the expectation is a 7th rounder for Brunskill in next year's draft.
Number 8.
Last one is Ernest Jones. And I don't exactly know what you would get in exchange for Ernest Jones. You traded a 6th rounder in next year's draft for Ernest Jones, but I believe you got like a 7th rounder or something in return as part of the deal for Ernest Jones. It's a very, very minor deal in order to get Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones is on a rookie contract, he's not making a lot of money, and his contract expires at the end of the year, similar to that of Dylan Radunz. He's a solid player. He's not a good player. He's not a great player. He's not a special player, but he's a solid player. So I'm going to label him. I don't really know what the expectation is. I'm going to label him as a 7th rounder in this year's draft. So you traded a 6th rounder for Ernest Jones, in next year's draft. So a 7th rounder in this year's draft. So Hopkins, I think you're looking at a 4th if you eat the money. Folk, a 5th. Diggs, a 5th. Radens, a 6th. Sebastian Joseph Day, a 6th or a 7th. Boyd, a 7th. Brunskill, a 7th next year. And Ernest Jones, a 7th in this year's draft. Ian, that's a lot of 7th round draft choices if you decide that everything must go.
Lots of cold McDonald's line up. Come on down.
A lot of Colton Dowells. A lot of, but again, the thing with these trade chips, the one thing I will say is,
Now you can package and move up a little.
well, I don't think you really do that, but I think what you can do is around free agency time, this year, is if there's a team that, they're trying to get Johnny to take a pay cut, but he's a good player, but he don't want to take a pay cut, so they're going to release him if they don't, and so then you could say, well, what do you think? And then I think you could do a 7th round pick, and I think you could do something like that. So that would be at least a little bit of an added benefit. And then again, with every shot you're taking something. Apparently Green Bay signed Brandon McManus. Good for them. Because as soon as he was found not guilty or whatever by the NFL, I was like, Green Bay needs to go sign him. 615-737-1025. If you think I have hot takes, Paul Kaharski had an opinion about a trade yesterday that is honestly one of the craziest things I have ever heard in my life. That's next. 1025 The Game.
trades the last couple of days. Just what have your conversations been like with Ran and Chad about setting yourself up before the deadline? Your opinions on selling, buying, input?
I let those guys handle most of that right now. I got enough on my plate. That's we'll have conversations if those calls come in, but most of my focus is fully on trying to get us ready to go play Buffalo and all the games coming up after that too. So they handle the trade deadline. That's personnel's job. And if things come up, I'll be in the mix of it in the conversations. But other than that, I'm not in there doing a whole lot of it. They're the ones, if there's something going on, they're running that show.
That was a very Family Feud moment right there from Brian Callahan. I don't know if you guys ever watched the game show Family Feud, but Steve Harvey will go around and say, okay, we asked 100 people, what is the number one thing you forget in the bathroom? And then he'll ask the question and somebody will say something like, your puppy. And it's like, and Steve will look at them like they're stupid. And then we'll call them stupid. But the whole family, when they're waiting to see it, they're like, good answer, good answer, good answer. Good answer on Brian Callahan's part, being like, hey, man, trade deadline, that's them. That's not me. I don't know. So I got to give this Paul Kaharski take. Because if I said what Paul Kaharski said, he would go on the morning show and say, and then Stilly in the afternoon. So you got to hear this. This was yesterday. Thursday. This was yesterday on Robbie and Rex Road. This is what Paul thinks the Tennessee Titans need to do.
I think Simmons is a tough trade. I talked to somebody in the league that was like, people will like Simmons. There are people that will like Simmons, but that contract is massive.
Yeah.
And so, if you think a defensive tackle is getting you through this year, and helping you, maybe, but taking on that contract is an awful lot. I think it would be healthy for the Titans to trade Simmons to get a pick. It's not going to be a first by any means, but to get a pick and to force a restart of leadership on defense, because I think his leadership on defense has been generally oversold.
Okay. So Paul Kaharski says they should trade Jeffrey Simmons and not get a first-round pick in return. What? Like, you guys say that I have hot takes and I'm crazy. He says I'm crazy. Trading Jeffrey Simmons and saying, look, you need to do it. You're not going to get a first, but you should do it anyway. He's saying you should trade Jeffrey Simmons and not get a first. So it would, a second-round pick? You trade Jeffrey Simmons for a second-round pick. Holy crap. And let me say this. I'm not a Jeff Simmons guy. I think he's a whiner. I think he's like a better passenger than a driver in terms of the leadership train. Like, I think he's good to have on the cover of the media guide when your real leaders are the four other guys around him. But you don't get better at football this year or next year by getting a second-round pick for Jeffrey Simmons, unless you turn that second-round pick into A.J. Brown, which is possible but not likely. You don't get better. And I'm not even talking about better this year. Jeffrey Simmons is under contract for next year. Like, he has to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And if his antics are so bad, or his leadership is so bad, that you just have to get rid of him, the way that the Philadelphia Eagles had to get rid of Terrell Owens, even though they were a good team without T.O., but a great team with T.O. If you have to do that with Jeffrey Simmons, you got problems. Because I know, I've watched for 5 years, you compete at a level with Simmons on the team, and I'm sure Simmons was the same level crybaby that he is at times now. But a second rounder for Jeffrey Simmons? What? That's crazy. The Titans, for instance, wouldn't trade T'Vondre Sweat for 2 seconds. Remember, again, we're talking about that Rams trade, and the Rams got the second this year, and then they moved back, or Carolina got the second from the Rams, and they moved back to 52. Like, if you think T'Vondre Sweat is so valuable that you're not going to take 2 seconds for T'Vondre Sweat, you're definitely not going to take 1 second rounder for Jeffrey Simmons. And I don't know about you guys. I've given up on 2024. I don't think the quarterback is worth salvaging. And because I don't think the quarterback's worth salvaging, I don't value winning it all this year. I don't think that, winning and giving us confidence and making this and doing that, I don't think that that does anything. But I am trying to win in 2025 and 2026. And I'm convinced that trading Simmons just means that you'll have to go get another Jeffrey Simmons. If you trade Simmons today, you have to go get another Jeffrey Simmons tomorrow. It's kind of like you traded A.J. Brown. Well, now you got to go out and you got to go sign DeAndre Hopkins. And then you got to go sign Calvin Ridley because you haven't replaced A.J. Brown. So I think we could talk about how they coach Simmons and hold him accountable. And I'd like him to be treated like an adult and not constantly make excuses for him and laud him for being a leader when he's out there chewing buck off in the sideline. But trade him for a second round pick? No. I heard that and I was like, oh my God. If I had a 2:00 segment, the 2:00 segment was, I think they should trade Simmons for a second round pick. They'd go, everybody on the text line and Twitter, they'd go nuts every time. They'd say, you're just mad Simmons got mad at Buck and not you. That's why you want to trade him. They think it's like personal or something. I think, again, don't call me crazy if you're going to say go do that. Somebody texts in and says Simmons is not worth the first. You don't trade Simmons. You build around Simmons. Oh, my goodness. I think they should trade Simmons for a second. Well, he didn't say for a second. He said not for a first. So what, a third?
Whatever you can get. Best you can get. Best offer. Give me your best offer.
Oh, my God. My best offer is that he plays better. That's my best offer. Go play better. I'm not getting rid of you because then I have to go get another one of you, and I just rather have the you that I already have that I'm already paying $23.5 million. Go play better.
What about Sweat?
What do you mean?
Couldn't he, become kind of move into that position?
He's not even Danico Autry right now, and I want him to go be Jeff Simmons?
Well, I mean, Simmons is not a big sacker.
No, but Simmons is a much better sacker than Sweat has seemed to be at this point.
Maybe.
Again, no. I'm keeping the guy I have now. Crazy talk. Hal's up next here, live from Bridgestone Arena. Hey, join 1025 The Game and Big Joe Dubin from 11 a.m. to 1 o'clock this Saturday at Hope Fest 2024, a family-friendly festival celebrating hope found in the faith and recovery community. The event will be held at the Bethel Church of Nazarene at 455 Broadmoor Drive in Nashville from 11 to 2 p.m. with free food, games for the kids, mental health and recovery resources available. Take advantage of that if you need to. Seriously. The Tennessee Titans Alumni Association will be on hand with their vaccination clinic, and there are more details at theGameNashville.com/events. Nashville's best deal this week is Staley's Chicago Italian Dining right here in Nashville, winners of numerous Best of awards. This is truly one of the best kept secrets in Nashville. Staley's Chicago Italian Dining brings amazing Italian food to the South, including original Italian beef sandwiches, Vienna-style Chicago hot dogs, and the best gyros south of Chicago. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get half off a $20 gift card while supplies last. Hal Gill joins us on the program for the first time this season. Harold, it is so good. We haven't talked in forever. It's so good to see you.
I know, it's been nice, huh?
You've missed the show, haven't you?
I sure have. Well, I miss hockey season, but it's not all rainbows and roses in the hockey season. You have to do this too. So this is good.
It's also not all rainbows and roses right now in Predator Land, where they're 0-3.
Sure isn't.
And they're playing Edmonton tonight, who always comes in here and scores about 15 goals with Draisaitl and McDavid every time they show up. What is the biggest problem right now with the team? Why have they not been able to get off the schneid? And what I would call 3 frustrating games that were frustrating for separate reasons.
All right. Well, okay. Are you going to tell us the reasons, or do you want me to tell you?
Well, you're the expert, right?
All right. Now we're talking. Thank you, Jared. He's finally admitted it. He finally admitted it.
I thought it was a bad period against Dallas.
It was. Here's what it was. Games 1 and 2, Dallas and Detroit, they played well. They did some good things. They had some spurts where they weren't very good. Lost maybe 5 minutes in each game where they weren't as sharp as they could have been. But they could have won those games. And so I'm not worried about that. Last game was a tough one. You had the Kraken. You didn't get the lead. You gave up 2 goals with some sloppy defensive zone coverage. And then you made the comeback, right? Okay, we're coming around. We're figuring it out. They did make the comeback. And then the third period comes around, and it was like, they just made poor decisions, like over pursuing on the forecheck. You have 3 guys caught down low. You need to have an F3. I tell my son's 14U team, everyone know you need to have a high forward. That's just good hockey. They didn't have a high forward. It cost them. Gave up a goal. They over pursued in the D zone. They didn't protect the center of the ice. Not to say that you can't run with the play and move with the play, but you have to be a little bit responsible, especially when you're not winning. You need to have a detail for the defensive side of the puck. So I was disappointed. I know the players, the coaches, they were all disappointed with that third period. That was not good enough. But I think you had 6 periods, maybe 8 periods where they were good and like with gaps in there. But that third period was not good. And I hope they come out and respond. That's what I'm looking for is that response tonight.
So it's early in the season, and I try not to get too worked up one way or another. But it does feel like it's kind of like probably a cloud over the team right now. Is like, get off the schneid and then start worrying about, which line combinations are the best for this group as they try to adjust. But there's something about this, like, if they don't win tonight, then it's 0-4. And then all of a sudden there's all this pressure on Saturday to not be 0-5. And then there's the Bruins. There's something to that I find very disconcerting.
Yeah, no, that's a very real, that's a mentality that you have to get through. You have to get, you need to have confidence to score goals. You need to score goals to get confidence. And the bottom line is no one's going to do it for you. You have to work for it. You have to go out there. Okay, Stamkos hit post. Like, okay, he's got to dial it in and get it in the inside of the post. It's like, okay, but, it's not just one guy that is not performing. It's a team thing. It's a team dynamic. So you switch up the lines. You change them up. Something's got to click. And, I think it was, they got a spurt of energy after Marchessault got in a little scruffle there. He took a bad hit. You're at home. Sometimes it's harder at home to turn things around. You can't play a gritty, hard road game, defensively stingy when you're at home because you feel like you need to excite the crowd. You need to get going. So, but they need that right now. So I think there's a lot of things going around in their head. The bottom line is you need to go out, work hard, work as a team, and get yourself out of it and get your teammate out of it. And that comes with, some sacrifices. I want to go score goals. Well, I got to play defense first. Sometimes you got to lock it down first and then push it out.
So I had Barry on the show, Hal Gill with us here on the program. I had Barry on the show on Tuesday, and I said, Barry, I think the problem is that, which by the way shows you that I'll say whatever I think. It doesn't matter. I'll tell him whatever I think, whoever it is, whatever.
You'll tell Gretzky how to pass it.
They have 5 top 6 forwards right now. That I think is the problem, is that they're looking for that guy to center that second line. It looks like they're going to go back to Tommy Novak. I'm not really a believer in Tommy Novak, but I understand why they're going to give him another crack at it. Who needs to be the guy, or what do they need to find in that 6th guy that can play with Stamkos and Marchessault, and then get those guys going at the level that they've shown kind of flashes that they still have in their game?
Yeah, look around. There's not too many teams that you look at and go, that's the total package. That's everything, right? There's going to be a gap here. There's going to be, we're top heavy with the salary cap the way it is. You're going to be top heavy at one thing. You're going to be weak on another thing. You kind of have to deal with those little weaknesses. But Tommy Novak has made some plays. I think he has 2 goals, and I feel like he's made some plays. Evangelista and him seem to have some chemistry. I don't think Tommy Novak is the problem. I think there's a lot of people looking around, looking at other people to do the job. But I think as a team, they need to come together. I think, you're pointing at this line or this guy or this, that's not the problem. I think it's a team-wide thing. And I think, Brunette would probably tell you, hey, well, I got to be better too. I got to make sure that these guys are in a position to play and compete, not look to the guy next to him to make the play. I think it's a full team thing, and they're just figuring it out. And that's the funny part about playing NHL now. When I was playing, when I came in the league, we could lock it down 1-2-2 forecheck and clog up the trap in the neutral zone. And it was pretty consistent every night. You knew what you were going to get. Now it's a high flying game. There's a ton of skill out there, and you're taking chances, and you have a lot of movement. And so it's tough to really lock it down and rely on defense to win and to slow teams down and to grind it out. You kind of have to play, and you have to play with confidence, but they have to play with confidence together. And so I think you're looking at different lines trying to work together. You leave them together longer. Maybe they've developed that chemistry, but they don't have it right away. So you change the lines. And so they're trying to feel things out. And I think it's just a matter of time before they get it. There's too many, you look at this team, there's too many good players, too much leadership in the locker room, too many guys that care too much about this team and what they do and their profession and how they handle themselves. They're going to get out of it. It's just, how do they do that? And when do they do that?
So that's why I think they just need that first win.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, all right, we got the pressure of trying to get the first win. Now let's just get the work.
Or that first goal, like that good feeling that, okay, we're back. And then it kind of grows. And I think it's hard. Back in the day, you just go out and fight, right? Like if things aren't going right, let's get in a Donnybrook. Everyone's chucking them. There's gloves all over the ice, and you bond together as a team, and then you go and win games. And you can't do that anymore. You got to work through this stuff, and you got to work as a team without that stingy defense fight mentality. You got to go play, and you got to work through it that way.
Hal Gill's with us on the program. Hal, what is the deal with Andrew Burnett's system? Like, what makes it so complicated that even Roman Josi took half a season before he really meshed with it? And now I think there's a little bit of that with the new guys they've added of getting the system under the belt. What is so special about his system that does that?
Yeah, I think what Bruno wants is a fast, relentless pursuit of the puck. If you look at the O'Reilly, Forsberg, Nyquist, you look at that line, and when they play well, a lot of times they lose the puck, right? They're in a little scrum in the corner, and they're doing all these little plays, and they lose it, but then they get it right back. And then they get the puck, and then they boom, 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 score a goal. And it's not always like the pretty passing play. It becomes pretty because they battle for it. They're relentless on pucks. And I think offensively, they are trying to extend plays. They're not just rimming it around the boards. They're not just killing plays. they're trying to extend plays in a tight area, and that works. And that's their system offensively. Defensively, it's supposed to be a quick puck movement, get it up, move it, anticipate that it's moving, and work together. And when it's off and you don't win those battles, and then you're caught on the wrong side. And that's the risk of playing this way is you're playing fast, you're risking those turnovers, but you got to, Brady Shea needs to get the puck, move it quick. And for a long time, it's been, okay, let's bring it, control it, let's get it and move it, and I'll join the rush. Whereas now it's get it, move it into an area that we win another battle. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. And it's a little bit quicker. And I think when it works, it's really hard to play against because you defensively, you can't set up and stop it. It's already happened. And so it's like, whoa, I'm a step behind. I'm a step behind. I'm a step behind. And then it goes up the ice. And that's when they're doing it well. They're moving the puck fast. And it's really hard to play against that.
Quickly, last one for you. I'm not going to say, why is it that Edmonton comes in here and McDavid and Draisaitl always take over the building? Because they are two of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
And that's why they do it. But what can the Predators do to keep tonight from being another one of those Leon Draisaitl nights?
It's really hard to do that because these guys are they're awesome. They're
the best players
they're
in the
best
world.
players in the world. But I think the biggest thing is playing that game where you're moving it up and you're moving it quick and you're forcing these guys to go all the way down so you can get your gaps. If you don't have your gap on Connor McDavid, you're done. Like I've seen so many defensemen just go up, lock it up, and then turn around and skate as fast as they can, trying to match his speed. If you have your gap and you're in his face already, then you can slow him down. You can slow him down enough that someone from the backside can help you out. If you have Connor McDavid one-on-one with a full sheet of ice, there's not too many guys that can stop him. So you need to play that fast game where you're getting pucks and transitioning up so that the D can get up and the forwards can get up and get in position so that when he does get the puck, he's going to get hounded right away. Because the second he picks up speed and it happens fast, he's deadly. And so it's a challenge. It's going to be another challenge tonight. But I think this team knows, and maybe that's what they need. They need that urgency of, oh boy, we can't take a shift off here because we'll look like a fool.
Or take a stupid penalty because if you put them on the power play, I mean, it's going in the back of the net.
Yeah, they're just there's too much. And that's the other thing. You're shorthanded. You're just giving them that much more room to move. And then they start buzzing and moving around. And their power play does not look like a static power play that you'll ever see. It looks like Red Army and good luck trying to read that and read where your biggest threat is because you have too many weapons.
Hal Gill will be on the Bally's broadcast night. Hal, good to see you.
It's good to see you. Hey, in all seriousness, it's nice to be back talking to you, and because that means hockey's back.
Hey, I asked you questions without telling you what I thought and asking for
I know.
real.
That was exciting. That was exciting.
Preds game days next.
Except now you get your next segment. You get to say whatever.
Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson. The Predators tonight 0-3, and they do not need to be 0-4. That would be bad. And so the one problem is that it's Edmonton, and Edmonton started off 1-3, but they do have the two best players probably in the world in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And the thing that's crazy is that McDavid is the best player in the world. But when Draisaitl comes into this building, he is the best player that ever lived. And I am worried about that tonight. So our final thought, our key to the game is do not let Leon Draisaitl go off. If the Predators lose and Draisaitl doesn't score, I'll take it as a plus. If they win, I'll be ecstatic. Max has the pregame show. That's next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow, too.